All right, welcome to a special called session of the Athens-Clarke County Commission and Mayor. We already have called roll. We've just completed an executive session, and we are going to return now to the public elements of our special called session, beginning with TSPLOST 2018, Project 7, which is our calendar year 2022 pavement maintenance program project. Commissioners and members of the public may remember that we had to have a rebid on pavement maintenance this year, given cost escalation that a lot of folks, public and private, are going through. And so, Manager Williams, is there anything you'd like to provide just at the front end of the conversation?
No, sir.
All right, I'd certainly entertain a motion for approval. Rules are suspended already. Yep.
So
I have a
moved.
question, Mr. Mayor.
I'll second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Myers, second from Commissioner Denson, and then a question from Commissioner Houle. Any further input, Commissioner Myers?
No, I would like to hear the question from my fellow commissioner first here.
Any further input? All right, Commissioner Houle.
Yeah, I see this. It's encouraging that the bids come in under budget. I'm curious, was Pittman the sole bidder on this?
I believe there were two.
I see there were two in the first round, but when this got sent back out, was there only? I'm sorry, I didn't, if I,
Item 33.
yeah, so item 26 mentions the two from that first round in April. And then item 33 says that Pittman was identified as the qualified and responsive bidder, but it doesn't mention if anyone else bid as well.
Yes, they were the sole bidder.
Okay. Do we have, I guess I just find it a little odd that the other bidder didn't try again, but do we have any understanding as to why that may be? Or maybe the better way to put this is, did we go through all the same things we always do with putting out
Yes.
the bid? Okay.
Yes. And there's a lot of work out there right now, and so it could be that the other, bidder had enough work to do that they didn't pursue this. But the good news is, for those that are watching, that of the amount that we had available, the way that we bid it out was to make sure that we at least got a base amount of work done, and then we did add alternates in case the base bid came in affordable, and it did. And so we were able to get those add alternates that we were hoping to get as well.
All right, is there a budget ordinance associated with this?
I did not see one with it. I just searched it. Is there one? Yep, no.
Okay. All right, any further input? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion carries. All right, item 2 on our special called session is an ordinance for the 31st declaration of a local state of emergency. If you were with us a week ago, we passed a state of emergency. We are going to be taking a couple of normal meetings off this summer, I'm happy to report, here in late June and early July. And so this simply allows us to do the extension that will carry us through our July 19th agenda-setting meeting. So I'd entertain a motion for approval.
Read that one.
Go ahead, read the ordinance.
An ordinance for the 31st declaration of a local state of emergency related to COVID-19 and for other purposes.
All right, do I hear a motion?
So move to approve.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Link, second from Commissioner Denson. Any input, Commissioner Link?
Nope.
Commissioner Denson? All right, any others? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, item 3 is a resolution regarding settlement with party Jammoul. Do I hear a motion regarding this item?
Move to approve the settlement.
Second.
I've got a motion from Commissioner Edwards, second from Commissioner Link. Commissioner Edwards, any input on this item? Commissioner Link? All right, any others?
Actually,
Commissioner Myers.
I know I've asked this question again, but I'd like it clarified for anyone listening. Could the manager or the attorney clarify for us all where the funds for this come from, these payouts?
This comes from the Human Resources Risk Management budget.
Okay, so this is all budgeted in our,
Yes.
okay, great. I'm good.
All right, any others? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Similarly, item 4 references a resolution with the party Patterson for a settlement. Do I hear a motion regarding that item?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Link, a second from Commissioner Hool. Commissioner Link, any further input?
No.
Commissioner Hool? All right, any other member? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All, any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion carries. All right, once again, this is the last meeting of this fiscal year and this month of this body, and we will meet again on the 19th of July. So that is our next meeting, and that is our normally scheduled agenda-setting meeting preceding our voting meeting in August. Also, we'll remind everybody that early voting is underway right now in the runoffs for both some state and local offices, and Election Day is June 21st. So if you've not gotten out to vote yet, please roll on down to the Board of Elections. Easy to do. All right, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn special called session.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Denson, second from Commissioner Hool. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned, and we're going to move into our work session, so I am going to relocate. Four items this evening, beginning with our Clean and Renewable Energy Action Plan. Manager Williams, do you want to say any words by introduction here?
Thank you, Mayor. This has, I think you're going to appreciate the amount of work that has gone into this very important planning effort, and you are an important part of that as well. And so I look forward to the presentations that we have today. I think the goals that you have put out there for this community and this government, I think, have been observed closely in this, and we're excited about the future.
All right. And, we have Sustainability Director Mike Wharton. Good to see you, sir.
How are you? Let me take a quick moment because y'all haven't met folks from my office yet. If y'all can stand up, is Jennifer Dunlop and Aaron Hall are both with Sustainability. So that's the face of kind of who's making all of this happen at this moment. So thank you. Tonight we bring before you the draft of the Clean and Renewable Energy Action Plan for your consideration and feedback. The Sustainability Office has been assisted in this effort by South Face Institute and the Green Links Analytics. This is a culmination of a two-year effort that included educational initiatives, data gathering, multiple community listening sessions, and extensive public engagement with the goal of creating opportunities that include every member of the community. All this while weathering a pandemic. It was a blast. Before we present the plan, I want to recognize and thank some of the following. The Community Advisory Board for their generous donation of their time, talents during the past 2 years, attending monthly and multiple extra meetings, reaching out to the community and sharing their insights. CAB members, it's been an honor to work with you, and we have Amy Kassain from the CAB who's joined us tonight. She's one of the 10 members of that group. Our own Athens-Clarke County staff representing multiple departments who contributed their time and expertise to the plan development effort. The agencies, nonprofits, and organizations who took the time to share their thoughts and their experiences. Business and industry representatives who took time out of their busy days to generously share their knowledge and, equally important, share their concerns and their questions. Community members who took time to engage with the process. Each of these groups and individuals generously gave their time, shared concerns, provided insights, and have contributed to and shaped the plan you'll see tonight. Our deepest thanks and appreciation to all who participated in this effort. We want to emphasize this is not an ending, just with the approval of the plan. This is a beginning. This is where it starts. So without further ado, I want to turn the microphone over to Robert Reed of South Face Institute to give an overview of the plan. Robert?
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. I'm Robert Reed with South Face Institute. I'm going to do a brief sort of overview of the plan, and then we'll get into whatever questions you may have. I do want to introduce the members of our team. Maria Weber has been the project manager on this project and really the quarterback of pulling it all together. Samantha McDonald is with GreenLink Analytics and is the brains behind the analysis. She's if you have any questions about the data inside of this, she'll be the one to be able to help with that. And Amani Love is another member of our team with South Face and is helping out on this project in preparation for another project, a similar project we're doing in another city. So thank you all for the time this evening, and I'll get right to it. So this begins the official process of the review of the plan, and this is ultimately the request for your approval of the plan. And so we've, as currently scheduled, that's August 1st commission meeting. So in this presentation, there's going to be a review of the timeline. You've seen some of these before, so we'll go through some of that fairly quickly. But the resolution that you took on, the community education that Mike mentioned, public engagement review, some of the depth of there. But really, we're going to spend the bulk of the time talking a little bit about the pathways for a clean and renewable future. We're going to talk about how we rank them, how we did an equity review, and then talk about some of the big picture themes we've developed to help sort of help capture your imagination a little bit about this. Next steps, questions and answers. So that's the presentation. So it's a clean and renewable energy plan. And so very clearly we need to define what is in and what is out. And so you see the typical things that are that your people think of when they're thinking about clean energy, which is solar, wind, hydropower. But we also include energy efficiency. It is actually the best opportunity that most communities have, and Athens-Clarke County is no different. And so energy efficiency is the biggest opportunity we have to get us closer to a clean and renewable energy future. We also include things like renewable energy credits, which is how you sort of get over the finish line at the end. And then energy storage is another technology that's developing over time. So some of these slides you've seen in the October review. Project started really with your adoption of the 100% resolution. We're going to go over that in a moment. The Community Advisory Board was recommended the SPLOST and ratified by the voters. And then the establishment of the Community Energy Fund, which is funded by local revenue from the energy utilities. And so, and then as Mike was talking about, we all sort of really got this going up and running in March of 2020, just in time for the pandemic. So we've had a little bit of a stretching of the schedule, but we are here, and it is allowed for really deep community engagement. As you can sort of see there in that process, January through June of 2021, we'll go into this more depth on that in a moment. But our current focus is this Clean and Renewable Energy Action Plan. We've been soliciting feedback and have a very depth of that, but because of the process, the formal process of the commission hearing, we're going to have two more sort of hearings after that. We'll talk about that. But ultimately, we are here for this seeking adoption. Quick review of your commitment to renewable energy in the future. 100% clean renewable electricity for municipal properties and government operations by 2035, and then 100% for the community by 2050. Very big goal, very audacious goal, and it will take a lot of the pathways we're going to talk about, if not all of them, to get there. But it is something that with the right commitment and deliverables, you can get there. We need to not forget the real sort of equity issue in energy. It's easy to forget. You think about affordable housing, you think about all sorts of disadvantaged and previously burdened communities. But an energy burden is defined as high at 6% of your income. Athens-Clarke County's median energy burden is 7.1. And you can sort of see the map with the darker colors being a more energy burdened communities. And so this really, oftentimes we have housing that is, substandard, and those properties are often paying the highest energy burden. And so this really has been a focus of the plan, and we'll talk about some of those action items inside of that. big community engagement process, 59 listening sessions, 5 town halls in which we took feedback, 3 charrettes with the Community Advisory Board and other participants invited are really around community and equity, clean energy economy, and which is really about the economic development potential inside of this, which has its own chapter inside of the plan, and then the intersection of the natural and built environments, or the opportunities around some of the natural environments that we can create as well. Town halls really focused on education, really, and it really came out from the Community Advisory Board, the importance of bringing the community along. These are big, complex topics that people have sort of an understanding about, but maybe not know some of the depth on, and so bringing the whole community along is really going to be an important piece of this. Huge numbers of survey responses and business surveys and community responses as well. So here's one of those great slides that you're not meant to read, but this is just a sampling of the organizations that participated in some of those listening sessions as well as input sessions. Hopefully you recognize several of these, but again, this is just a nice wide sampling, but to sort of illustrate the number of people who have participated, number of groups that have participated. So we'll dive in now to the sort of the plan itself. And as I mentioned, GreenLink and their sort of expertise in the sort of this realm nationwide. They're working in multiple different regions and really have assembled dozens and dozens of pathways that will ultimately turn into programs. And so, but selecting which of those are most impactful, which of those are legal in Georgia, and all that is a process of its own. So we take from sort of all the available pathways, we establish priorities based upon their sort of ability to be implemented, as well as things like are they legal, and then we filtered it through an equity review, and then looped them back into these big picture themes we'll talk about here in a moment. So that was the process for tiering the pathways. Another slide you're not meant to read, but the pathways you'll see in the plan itself number in the dozens, and each of those are a program, potential program. As you can see by the middle column, each was given an equity score, and we did that to ensure that the sort of first priorities had none that had a negative impact on equity issues. So the tiering process, obviously tier 1, most and urgent for successful, things that you want to invest in early and often, and make sure that they have a long time period, because if we're talking about potentially favorably impacting all the houses in the community, all the homes and where people live, it's going to take a while for a program to get up to scale and be able to have that kind of impact. So those are sort of things that were put on the tier 1, most urgent for success. And then as funding and other things present themselves, and we're hoping for a good amount of federal funding, as those opportunities present themselves, then potentially a second tier program might jump up out of a pathway. And then tier 3 are things that are good ideas, but potentially the regulatory framework in Georgia, or generally speaking, might prevent them. And then after we sort of did an initial review of that, then we went through the equity scoring process to ensure that we didn't have any conflicts there. So here are the groupings into big picture themes. This is sort of intended to, really so that Mike and the Sustainability Office staff can sort of quote off sort of the big picture approaches, and so that all these themes, all these potential programs from these pathways sort of filter into this, but these are the ones that are sort of identified as being your first opportunities. So leading by example, we talked about your commitment for government buildings and operations being 100% renewable. It's nearly impossible to bring a community along unless you're actually walking the talk. Really heard from the stakeholders and the Community Advisory Board and other residents that the importance of investing in the community, that if a project was maybe able to deliver high amounts of energy but didn't build community or give other opportunities, that it didn't need to be on a high priority. Being part of the larger solution, already excited to see the actions that are being taken by you in your other sort of similar cities, partner cities in the integrated resource planning process. The utility was notably what's the word I want to use? Intrigued by that sort of everyone coming together, and so we're excited to see the prospects that come out of that. But this is really just the first step. This happens every 3 years, and the opportunities will present themselves, and so this is to be seen as a longer part of a battle. Closing the gap, I mentioned renewable energy credits. The things that have been filed by the utility, by the time you get to your goal, the utility will not have made a full transition to clean and renewable energy. And so there are going to be opportunities to close that gap by purchasing renewable energy credits. And this is where you basically buy into a market that exists and the renewable energy gets put onto the grid. Ideally, we heard very clearly from the members of the community that it's important those be local as much as possible, and so that money stays in the community. The economic development component, the building a workforce and improving opportunities. Really, if you think about all the money that goes on your utility bill for the fuel component, almost all of that goes out of the state. And so if we start having a lot of this local energy here by reductions through energy efficiency and by replacement through renewable energy, then that money stays in the community, and that is a workforce development opportunity and allows us to build a better future for many of the community residents who may have limited opportunity currently, but this is going to expand their opportunities. And then really clearly from the Community Advisory Board, the community education and engagement component, where it is important that we bring along the community for their understanding, but also that they are involved deeply in the construction of these programs as they move from a pathway into a funded sort of program, that they are part of that process so that they have an understanding as well as an input on the favorable impacts that's going to have on the community. So that's the overview of the sort of the structure of the plan, and while we do our best to make the clean and renewable energy planning as riveting as possible, it is a big report. And so to the degree that we've hopefully given you an overview, we appreciate that. So the official process, public engagement process has begun. Mike and his team have multiple events that they're taking and spreading the word and putting out the flyers about where to pick up the copy of the plan online, as well as a feedback form. So we're going to be collecting all those and adding that as an addendum to the plan for your consideration at the adoption meeting. We are going to have a virtual public meeting on the 17th. We're going to start that at noontime with the attempt to try to engage as many people as can join us sort of in the middle of the day at their lunch break, and at 1:30 as well, to sort of go through roughly this same presentation and sort of garner any other additional input, as well as an in-person session at the public meeting. And then you're going to be setting your agenda, and then currently scheduled for an August 1 plan approval. So that is the process. We have lots of more slides of if you have particular questions about pathways or anything like that, but we'll leave it at that and see if you have any questions, and thank you for your attention this evening.
Any questions from commissioners to the South Face team or to Mike? Carol?
Yeah, I have a bunch of questions, comments. This is one of the reasons why I came onto the commission, so this is essentially like real essential to me. And there's, I'm really excited about this. A lot of people have put in a lot of work. I'm really appreciative, especially it's been really hard during this COVID time. So I know that's been an extra challenge, like in everything else. I want this to pass, and I want it to pass soon, but I was really concerned when I saw those dates, June 15th to 28th and the 17th, because I am a big educator of my constituents. The 17th is this Friday. I didn't know about that. June 23rd is next week, or a week after, when I will be out of town, and it's just hard to get to people. I would like an opportunity for more people to have their eyes on this. I think it's an important, I'm not sure how much will change things, but I do think it's an opportunity for people to know what's going on. And we've been so having public input and being transparent is so much a part of the values of this community. Having these so quickly right now without any chance to get the word out on it seems like a little bit rushed at the, right at the end here. So I am not, I'll see what my colleagues say, but I would like to have a little bit more lead time to get more people aware of what's going on. Half the, I got a bunch of people, I got 30 people out to my town hall, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get anyone out on Friday because I don't have time to put together that newsletter between now and then. So that's one thing. The second thing, I have maybe a question and a suggestion at the same time. I just picked this up. I got a wonderful color copy that I'm going to look through more closely. But I did review this a little bit with some of the people who are on the team, and I'm not sure if there's any next steps, like what would be good things to accomplish in first 1 year, like 1 to 3 years, so that our new energy coordinator could be working with the commission right away. And I'm not sure if that's something that could be put into the document itself, or perhaps our new energy coordinator could make a supplementary document plan for just a 2-pager or something, not something another 10 months, but something that we'd have some concrete space ideas about what to initiate in the next year or so. And I believe that's not quite in it at the level of specificity that would be as helpful. Do you guys have any comments on that, whether or not that's in there?
Sure, I'll address the second one first and then let you take over sort of the public engagement process. So just to sort of set you up for the some of the additional slides and the sort of the potential pathways. So the tier 1 action items, if you will, are going to be those that are the sort of immediate start.
Oh, you're going on. I thought you were finished.
No,
I
was
apologize.
done. I was done.
You were done.
It's just
Okay.
we have it gets a little thick after this point,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so we just wanted
Okay.
to make sure. So in the plan itself will be tier 1 action items. You can sort of see buildings, energy, community, environment broken down. So this is an example of the page of things that you would start as soon as you possibly can, finding the money as soon as you can, getting them into a budget process, and then really sort of building these from pathways into programs over time. And so you'll see in particular the things like the clean energy and equity sort of planning, which is sort of a big chunk of what we've already done, but the sort of moving these things into a program. Specifically, one of the things we are going to be sort of encouraging are going to be this revolving clean energy loan fund. So getting a block of money set up for the ability to do retrofits on community buildings and sort of getting it to where the savings start paying back, so that the sooner you get that going, the more you get the savings going and it starts building. So those would be what we would consider our recommendation for the sort of immediate action for your energy manager.
Yeah, and I just would like them to see a little bit more specific in a timeline of what we're doing here. The other thing, is there anything in the plan that I have not looked through on federal funding options, a review of federal funding options, or policy?
And did you want Mike to talk a
Well,
little bit about the
whoever has
public
the
input
answer.
too?
Oh, yeah, you can address the public input.
When it comes to the federal grants, that we didn't put that in the report itself, but we are closely monitoring that. We are a member of the Southeastern Sustainability Directors Network, and we actually have one of their staff who spends their time recording and presenting or sending us grant opportunities. We have several on the horizon that we're watching. There's, as you know, looking at it, we hear a lot about them without a whole lot being said for when they're available or even qualifications. So we are watching those really closely and plan to bring those forward.
Yeah, and the, while you're on that, before you get back to the public input, but, also, are there any specific policy suggestions in the plan that we would need to put into, pass as a body here? Are they outlined in here?
What you'll see in those Tier 1 actions will bring policies forward as part of accomplishing those. So you will begin to see policies be developed. looking at things like we will be reviewing ordinances as we go forward as well. And so those are things that will be coming. So again, having that clarity of where we're trying to get to helps us then begin to build the steps to get there. And that's the critical part, is once we have the vision of what the mountain looks like, now we can get through the swamp a little bit easier. As far as public input, we are more than happy to meet with people. We are going to several events. While we say the end date, that's more of to be able to allow Southface to compile that data. We don't plan to take the feedback form down for a while. We plan to leave that up on the web so people can still do that. If there's a feeling like there's not enough public feedback, we can, of course, certainly wait. The only driving force there is that might delay bringing the plan forward in August and put it to September. We're more than happy to accommodate, and we'll get it done either way. That's kind of the driving force of being able to have all the documents when we need to have them for you guys for August. But we're happy to make it happen.
Is the online material just a replication of what people will see live in the
Yes,
room?
yes. So everything is at that Athens local, the website that was on the presentation. You'll find, and of particular interest for folks is the condensed summary. If you want the really cliff notes, you look at that condensed summary, and that's got all the tiers listed in there and how we got there. So that makes it pretty easy to look fairly rapidly at that tier system and see how that works. So you'll see this, you'll see the presentation, see the plan, I think, and the executive summary will also be there.
Thank you. I'm eager to hear my colleagues' comments as well.
And one quick other minor thing, sorry. And so as further explanation, part of what was delivered is the plan inside of, or sort of following up on these action items in the pathways, included also as a toolkit that has a deeper description of what each of these are. And so it's the sort of thing that would easily sort of go into a motion before commission to become a policy of the commission. Thank you.
Thanks. Melissa?
Yeah, I'm just, I need to get a hold of the whole plan so I can read it thoroughly, but I'm going through the tiered action items, and I don't see a lot of intersection with planning and zoning and these action items. There's a couple places, and I'm more concerned about how do we address our building ordinances, our land use ordinances in order to incentivize renewable energy, in general, and, environmentally smart development. Right now, there are things being explored that kind of fall in line with this, yet I see them kind of in the lower tiers. This upzoning near transit stations, we had a missing middle housing presentation, which encourages higher density near walkable and transit corridors. So I feel like, that tiered item could be brought up further since it is something that is currently already under exploration. I'm just wondering if there could be more intersection with the planning and zoning department to see if some of these things could be brought into higher tiers because they're part of efforts that are already underway, or if there are things that are missing from here, especially when it comes to private development.
Sure. I mean, obviously, anything that is that you feel as though perhaps was missed is fairly easily added as part of the process. As far as the focus that was created for the built environment is really focused on sort of going to a zero energy building ordinances, and I forget exactly where that ended up in the tiering process, but that's a fairly big step, but it is something that your buildings department is perfectly capable of, and fortunately we do have local control over those sorts of building performance codes. The energy code is easily upgraded to a zero energy code, and that's definitely in here.
Thank you.
Russ?
Thank you. Could you please share with me your credentials for this plan?
Sure. Sorry for not having gone over that. Just to talk.
Just briefly. Yeah.
Sure. Organizationally, Southface is a 43-year-old nonprofit founded in 1978. Did the first Georgia Sunday, which was on a Wednesday, sort of a pun thing there. And Southface has been working at the intersection of the built and the natural environment, bringing energy efficiency to programs and communities for that time frame. We launched the Earthcraft Builders program in partnership with the Great Atlanta Home Builders. We got over 50,000 units of energy efficient housing that was part of our energy program. And personally, I do community planning. I do work with developers and developers and governments, helping them do planning processes that sort of lead to sort of more sustainable communities, and have been leading clean energy and similar sort of plans for the last 15 some odd years.
I'll lend my determination that you're an expert in this arena. And
it's a big arena, so
yeah, it's a big arena. But I looked at this plan. I see policies we've been talking about for years in this community. I guess we could release it for public input, and maybe there's an expert out there that's similarly credentialed to you that could provide something. But I think we can all agree that climate change is a problem, and it's a problem we need to address. I don't really see the benefit of public input for a plan like this, honestly. Mr. Mayor, I think we refer some of these to committee, we start developing policies, we adopt the policy. I think sometimes in this community, we are looking for expert opinions from the public, and it leads to delays for months and months for the implementation of policy. I think it's great to solicit input from the public to figure out what the problems are in this community that we can address as leaders and policymakers. But we've got a plan right here, and we know we've got a problem we need to solve. So I'm ready to move forward.
Mike and then Tim.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Very much appreciate you putting this together. I know, Mr. Warren, you've been working on this for an awful long time, so it's very, very good and thoughtful. I'll say this: I don't see any harm in if some folks have some constituents that they'd like to weigh in on this and just become aware of it. I think it's important for our constituents to become aware of what we're doing. This has been a goal of ours since I've been on the commission. And so I think a little bit more time for others to weigh in and for our constituents to see what it is we're doing and what's being recommended would be a good thing, actually. So, thank you.
Tim?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and thank you for all the work you've just gone into this. Just a couple of questions. With the action plans and the action items that are on here, has there been any estimates done on the effectiveness of these action items if they actually will be able to get us to our stated goals, say 100% by 2035 for county?
Yes, sir. I'll let our Green Links Analytics folks talk a little bit about their ACES model, and which builds this artificial intelligence digital twin of the region and sort of models how aggressive you are, and we'll talk a little bit about that.
Okay, great.
Hi, thank you. Again, Samantha McDonald with GreenLink Analytics. So our organization builds a tool called ACES. It stands for Advanced Clean Energy Scenario Model. So we built one for Athens, and we brought it along with all the community engagement sessions that we've done. This tool uses, like Robert said, excuse me, it creates a digital twin of an hourly load for Athens. So all of the supply load on the grid, it's copied, and then we will make changes on it based on what decisions will be happening in the future from the integrated resource plan, technology advances, rate increases that have been proposed. And we'll create that and we'll put that in this tool. So basically the user can go in, which the user has been the CAB and Mike and other community stakeholders. You can go in and you can actually say, I want to invest 50% of resources into energy efficiency, 20% into residential, wind, RECs. You create these scenarios and it'll spit out costs and benefits. So we went through a pretty long process of figuring out the different types of scenarios and which one made most sense for Athens. These scenarios are not set in stone, so there's a 100% max scenario where you just throw as much money, policy, doesn't matter. We just want 100% clean energy. And then there's a cost-effective one. So we looked at these three scenarios: business as usual, cost effective, and the max. And we put those in the plan. You can read about them. But again, I'd like to say they're not set in stone. It just kind of gives the reader like a picture of where Athens can head if they make investments now. Yeah.
Okay. And I understand if this is a hard question to answer, but what are we looking like? How large of, as we're calling it, the gap is to make that goal, and is it going to need to be filled by us purchasing credits?
I don't have the answer right in front of me, but I have it on my laptop, and Mike probably has it on paper.
Awesome, thanks.
So it's about 34% is what we would have to, let me also mention the fact that if we went 100%, for example, when we mention 100%, there are also basic assumptions that are built into that. Not every house can have solar on it. Not every business can have solar on it. Not every car will convert over to full EV within that time frame. So there is a recognition that there are limits in what we're able to accomplish. So when we say 100%, it's 100% of the assumption of what we can accomplish. So if technology changes, that may move the needle on that assumption as well. At the end of the day, we'll have approximately 34%, 35% that we would have to make up in some other way. That might be, for example, buying renewable credits. Now, from our standpoint in our office, you can buy renewable credits right now. You can buy them from places like Arizona or South Georgia. We're interested in working here in Athens. We want to see and pursue the opportunity to develop our REC program here, so money, jobs, and all of that comes home. We don't know if we'll be successful, but that certainly will be a goal that we're going to be shooting for, because we want it here and not somewhere else when we buy this stuff.
Okay, awesome. I appreciate it. And with my last comments, I will just also say I think it would be helpful to have an extended public input time, at least with the online input form, which I know we've made this request before with other plans situations. So even if I understand that staff's going to be getting things prepared, but even if it was just we're getting updates of the public input that we could go through and look into as y'all are making that work, and just keeping the portal open until, say, the July agenda setting session or so.
And we'll be more than happy. I was going to mention, too, if you look back, there's a whole chapter, a whole appendix on the public engagement part, and it was pretty extensive. So there was a lot of public engagement, a lot of outreach. We also went back and took everybody who participated in that effort that we had an email for, and we sent that email out to everybody because we felt it was important if they took the time to contact us and work with us. We tried to take the time to respond back and say, please look this over. You made a difference. You shaped this plan. We want to put it back in your lap. So we have gone as far as that too. So we just want to let you know that that's kind of our approach of trying to get that out. We're more than happy to leave the form up. We can even report probably, Southface will be delighted because it means that they can have a little bit more time to develop that feedback, tell you what they heard. So we could have that as a supplement to the agenda item probably by the August 2nd, because it'd have to give us a little bit of time to put that together. So we can leave it up, and certainly we can give you a preliminary before that, and then we can give you a final there at the August meeting of what we're hearing. Because we do plan to share everything that people do send to us. I mean, we'll try to shorten it for duplicates, and we'll take out any inappropriate comments.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone.
Jesse.
Thanks. A couple comments and a few thoughts. And first, I'll just say I'm really excited to dig into this. I have not had time to dig very thoroughly into this, so my questions are largely just about whether something is in this or not. But I'm really excited about this. I really appreciate all the work that's gone into this from everyone in the room and the hundreds of, if not thousands of people around the community who have participated to date. Regarding this kind of debate about whether to delay, I kind of feel like let's see where we're at when it comes to the voting meeting, and if it seems like there's a lot of interest from the public to weigh in more, or if we feel like there's been a real dearth of that and we've expected more, then maybe the decision to hold for an extra month and hold another session or two would make sense. It feels strange to me to have to commit to that now, but it also could make sense. I don't want to get bogged down, taking my colleagues' comments seriously, in dragging this out for too long. There's clearly been a robust public input process already. I also think there's a reality that people pay a lot more attention to things when they're closer to the finish line. So once it's coming up for a vote, there's likely to be a lot of people who will be more inclined to share their opinion, but maybe not, for whatever reasons, participating as much earlier on. And then also, this is in the heart of summer, and we have a lot of the youngest people in our community are currently gone, and demographically, the youngest people in the world tend to be the most concerned and enthused about climate change and sustainability, and certainly they're the ones who are going to have to live with this the longest. So, there's also a concern I have maybe about approving this at a time when they're not even, most of them are not here. And then my other thought is, I think your point's well taken, Mike, about the 100% is 100% of what we can actually accomplish. But I hope we will continue to check in on fossil fuels that are being generated from things that we can't convert. For example, not to focus too much on one department who's not in the room, but like airplanes are likely to not become solar powered in the time frame that we're talking about here, but they're a huge contributor to climate change. And so I would hope that part of the conversation will continue to be about some of those more transformative decisions that maybe we should wrestle with, that are difficult decisions, but ultimately might be worth considering when we're thinking about the fact that we're all living through these heat waves and heat domes. My questions, if I may, the first is just a very dense document. Typically, when we're inspired to ask questions, we route those through you, Manager Williams. Is there someone at South Face or in the sustainability office that's available to kind of field those questions in addition to that? Or like, what's the recommended methodology for, questions that may arise as we do have time to really dig into this?
So what we'll wind up doing is anything that comes to us, we will include Maria and Robert in on the ask, and they will pull in GreenLink as needed to answer the data questions as well. So
typical funneling of questions.
Yeah, that's kind of how we'll wrap it around.
And then just two things I'm curious if they're in here, because I've been like kind of control effing around, Is there anything related to trees? And I'm thinking about that from two angles. One is the maintenance and retention of them to reduce energy burdens on buildings, and the other is timber harvesting. We're talking about not counting biomass, but we don't want to contribute to the industry too, ideally.
So being an energy plan, you will see portions of this that address green infrastructure. So there'll be some discussion on that. As y'all know from my background, that is very dear to my heart. So you will see me pushing green infrastructure in everything that we wind up doing. So that is that intersection between the built and the green environment will be occurring. And there's kind of a desire to see, like, we want to see specific ordinances, or we want to see specific steps. And it's really tough this is this vision of where we're trying to go. We are fully engaged in creating that next series of steps, which is where we begin to define that to happen. We aren't stopping. We've been involved in the IRP already. As y'all know, we're on your behalf. We're also already gearing up to begin working with our local builders to create CEU classes for for builders and contractors on energy efficiency, because that was one of the things that we heard from our home building association is there's a dearth of these opportunities to really get out there and learn. So Aaron has already been actively working with our code enforcement and with JOMA, and other folks who are in that business to say, okay, what are we looking for? What can we get? So even, I guess I should say, we're moving forward with this. We're real excited about it, and we're not stopping when we have these opportunities. I want to also emphasize one other thing. Tier 2 items, when you see those are kind of the utility players in this plan. If we see a grant, if we see a presentation, if we see something coming up that says we need to move this to a higher, they literally will just flip up to that higher level and start working on that. We had to kind of start somewhere with some things that we thought were attainable or they weren't necessarily easy. Some things take a long time to get done, but they're still important to do. So you have to start somewhere and eat the elephant one bite at a time. So we put those in there. And we made sure we had some of those. And then others are kind of low-hanging fruit that you go after and you get immediately. And those tier twos are ones that have a little bit more timeline on them. They might be a little bit harder, but I guarantee you, we see a grant and we see that that fits, we're popping that one up into tier one and starting to work on it.
Awesome, thank you. And hopefully, no elephants will be harmed in this process. But, my last question, if I may.
It's elephant plant, I should have said.
And this might just be captured in what you were talking about there and some comments that my colleagues brought up already, but with regard to land use, is there anything in here specifically about conservation of undeveloped land or goals around that, or is that thought of as a separate conversation?
Being an energy plan, there's less emphasis on that. One of the other things that is in our work plan is to bring forward this same type of approach for our ecological resources, and then to embody those two into a larger sustainability plan. And I'd like to say that I have been able to work on all those things. I'll claim supply chain issues. We've been a little bit understaffed, but as we can, we are definitely bringing those forward in the next 12 to 24 months. You'll start seeing those start coming forward. We see these as integrated together. We see a conservation, that's why I have an ecological resource coordinator that we're working on. That, by the way, the job is open and posted. And that position and the energy position are really paired. They're twins, and they work together and they overlap with each other, because it's that blending that those positions will bring, and those ideas and concepts that's going to really create a more holistic approach and a more sustainable approach.
I just want to come back to this public engagement, because the June 17th and June 23rd meetings are not on any of our ACC. I can't find them online. So the June 17th is this week, is this Friday. So I'd like to request that we push those back so we can do some public information announcement on them, because, like I said, if I didn't know about them, I'm really into this, and I can't find them online. And I know you guys have been really busy and want that. So, that might be a situation where we could, if it's possible, to push them back 2 weeks to get some information out there. I would just, even if no one, I hate saying this is like, even if no one shows up, I will feel better if there's a announcement period that gives some people some ability to put it on their schedules.
Well, one of the things we can do is keep that in place and add more. We're open to doing that as well. Robert will love it.
Yeah.
South Face is already standing by to help if we needed more. We actually talked about that.
Yeah.
If that's within your capacity, this
If
is
it's in
purely
your
public
capacity,
announcement
or just
tonight.
putting in, if those haven't been publicly announced to, like the in public one, of putting it a little bit later so we can get some word out.
We sent it out to all those folks who participated, so.
Oh, okay.
That did go out that way, but we're happy to add another, at least one other virtual. If you want more, let us know, and we'll add those. We feel it's important to get the job done, and
Okay.
that's, we're willing to put the work in to do it.
Jesse?
Sorry, one last question. I don't want to get too far afield from this, but I just kind of want your elaboration on kind of the master sustainability office plan that's projected in the future. Where in there, and I'm imagining this is something that Commissioner Parker would be likely to bring up, because I've heard them bring it up in retreats, would climate resiliency fall? Is that a separate category that we'd also maybe look at as a third thing after we get through this and the next one? Or as natural disasters become more likely and brownouts probably become more likely,
I think they're embedded throughout the plan. It is that intersection between the built and natural environment of how we create a buffer or sustainability against climate change. What are those things we can do in our local community, our state, our region, and onward to begin to buffer against some of these things? And in some ways, storage plus solar, for example, as the science advances and the technology advances there, we can begin to buffer along those ways. It gets kind of interesting, shade versus solar panels. We start getting into that question, and yet shade provides a tremendous benefit. If you get approximately 40% of a city block covered in appropriate shade, it can it begins to mimic the forest, so it drops the temperature 10 to 15 degrees on these hot summer days. So looking at those kind of things in combination will be really the keystone and the elements that will be essential in the plan. We really see it as a holistic approach.
All right. Mike and team, thanks a lot. And yeah, if you can just kind of communicate how, an additional meeting might be worked into the calendar, that'd be helpful for everybody. If you got that through Brian. Great. Thank you all. All right. Next item that'll be coming up in a couple of minutes is the Classic Center's presentation. Commissioners probably remember that in the funding plan, 2 bond issuances were anticipated. The first one of those has been done already, and so you're going to be seeing on an upcoming agenda, the July-August agenda cycle, the second of these bond issuances. And so the Classic Center team, led by Cramer, is going to update us on that, as well as a kind of funding mechanism of a special tax district that you'll see on that same agenda cycle.
Great. Well, if we're ready, thank you very, very much for having us here and just being able to provide you a bit of an update on the Classic Center Arena project. I'll make sure all this jazz works. Right, so our purpose tonight is really to give you a bit of an update. We haven't been back to give you that project overview lately. Second, we wanted to update you on the budget that you had established and where we are in that process. And then come forward with a request for the second bond, which we've talked about when we did the first bond. But now we know a lot more about what goes into that second bond and give you an update there. And then talk to you about our first change order coming up. Great news, we're still in budget even with the change order, and I'll go into depth with that and then certainly answer any questions you might have. But just as a part of the overview, this arena is expected to drive almost 400,000 people coming into our community through a variety of events. All of it will drive significant economic impact. It's expected by 2 different studies to drive $33 million in economic impact, create 90,000 new room nights, generate 600 new jobs, and certainly create a good bit of additional revenue from taxation. The view of the building, the design is, we've shown this to you several times. I'm showing you this tonight really to point out that canopy that you see that goes all the way along here. In an effort to get the cost down, at one point we thought about removing that canopy. And there was some savings initially, but as we looked at the energy and evaluated the energy, by removing that on the south side of the building, it just really raises the ongoing cost going forward and is sort of detrimental to the overall project. So you're going to see that we're going to ask for that to come back as a part of the final project. A little bit of the update of the project itself. This is kind of the tough stuff, right? The first bond, we were able to do at roughly 2.2% interest rate. Now those interest rates continue to climb. We're roughly 5.28. Last time I went through it with David Cheapwood, there's also this need to capitalize interest for those 3 pieces of property that you provided to us, allowing them time to ramp up and be ready to pay us back the land lease. And then within the development of the project, if you recall, when we first went out, we had 75% drawings. Now we're up to 100% drawings, and there have been some reflective changes to the budget, which I'll go into more in detail. We've also started. As you know, we've signed the contract with the developer, we've cleared the land, we've gotten back there, and discovered there was far more rock back there than we initially expected. In addition to that, I'll remind you, this was property that was Atlanta Gas Light and Georgia Power, and so we needed to be careful about how we remove what we remove coming out of there. We did try to get some state funding, as you might remember. We first tried hotel motel tax. That didn't work. We went to the state legislature as Savannah had gotten a good bit of money for their arena project, but we were not successful in doing that. Bond council requires the second bond to be 100% taxable as we go forward, so that too has increased that second bond. We need roughly 22% more revenue than we originally thought we would need for the second bond because of those reasons that are there. But as I mentioned, good news overall. You had approved an overall budget of 135. Currently, we are at 132, and that does count the change order that I'm going to be asking you to consider as we go forward. How do we pay for that? We're doing SPLOST funds, which I'll remind you passed by a great majority. The first bond was nearly $50 million, and that has been executed. We have confirmed funds of 7.7 from the private sector and another 12 million which are pending final approval on. And then the second bond would be that 30 million. Just to remind you, some of those other private sector developments, our catering company, Levy, has contributed $2.7 million directly to the arena. The Classic Center Authority has committed $5 million directly to the arena project. We know those three pieces of property that have been, we've been in partnership with you on. We know what those are expected to deliver, at least on the initial part, prior to the land lease kicking in. And then I think you know that we are in the midst of the Elevate campaign, the fundraising campaign, raising $5.5 million, and we've committed 1.5 here. And then the scoreboard, our professional hockey team is willing to come forward and pay for the actual scoreboard and ribbon. And then both hockey teams together will be contributing their dollars to this arena as well. Same with our ticketing company. And then we still have a $14 million grant application into the state. And we actually have 2 federal grants that are out right now. But we're fairly certain that all of that collectively should drive another $5 million at the end, conservatively speaking. And then the second bond itself, you have the 3 parcels of property and their land leases, and you see those at the top. And then in addition, the Classic Center Authority now knows what our energy bill is going to be from Georgia Power. And so we were willing to contribute more annually to make that work. The naming rights has been a number we've carried from the start. And then the hotel tax increment is a recognition of just the Classic Center's portion of hotel motel tax, but recognizing that it grows incrementally year over year, and we could dedicate more of our hotel tax to paying back the debt, recognizing that we all need to do something. And then the final is this idea of the special district. As we went through the last session through the state legislature, and I should mention, we weren't totally unsuccessful there. We did receive $2.6 million from the state for the Music Hall of Fame, which was, I think, really significant. But we discovered this special district that could be created that would, in fact, generate additional revenue, and I'll dig into that a little bit more here in a second. But that is how we would pay back the second bond. I mentioned sort of hedging our bet as these developments come along. So you'll note in the notes that the debt service doesn't really begin until 2026, and that we have a ramp-up period, not feeling the full weight of the financing until 2028, particularly with those developments coming along. Here's the actual spreadsheet, and I know it's very difficult for you to see it all and read it, but a few things that I'll draw to your attention. Everything that I just went over is what David Cheatwood has put across the top. and then has brought down the various columns. But in total, what we're needing to get to is that $30 million that will be the project fund. And right now, the true interest cost, as last speculated, would be 5.25% as we go through that. So tonight, we really wanted to give you the overview. We know that we'll be coming back on the second meeting to approve both the special district and approval of the actual IGA that would support the bond as we come forward. Want to talk a little bit more about just summarizing the second bond. Again, we are staying under the budget that you set for us of 135. We're looking at closing the bond so that we have the revenue stream as we are already underway with construction. We're looking to close that on September of 2022. And so, again, we'd be coming back primarily on the, I think it's July 19th, there'll be another session, and then finally voting on August 2nd. Want to spend a little time talking to you about this. Was new concept to me and the authority special district. You, unlike last time, just to remind you, on January 6th, you actually voted unanimously to adopt a hotel tax increase, which basically would have generated $400,000. But then it had to go on to the state, and the state had to sort of approve that. But with the special district, you, the mayor and commission, have the ability to vote on the special district yourself. No state authorization is needed, and no ordinance, no public referendum would be needed. Why they exist, it's a great tool for local government that when you create something that's going to give funds back to the private sector, this is a way that we can get assistance to pay for that. It was recently used in the Atlanta Beltline, where the tax on the commercial and multifamily properties of Beltline were used. It was also used on Truist Park, on the Georgia Dome, and recently in Brookhaven as well. It is the recommendation of the authority to move this forward, levying 2 mills on our hotels throughout the county, making the county that special district. And why 2 mills? Because it would add up to the $400,000 that we had talked about before, and because that's the gap that is really needed to be able to bring this second bond all the way home. And just to give you a sense of the consumer impact, if the hotels were taxed this additional tax, and they decided they were going to raise their prices and pass it back on, it would amount to, at the highest that we did the math, $1.25 per overnight room. On average, it would mean 73 cents that they would have to increase the overnight rooms to make up this tax being added to them. The change order itself, I wanted to take a minute and go through that. As mentioned, between 75 and 100% was 2.7, and that is largely due to the escalation that you see everywhere. But the good news is it's 100% design, and we have let those packages out, and so we now know where that price tag is going to be. I mentioned that we have revenue coming in for both the ECHL and the Georgia Music Hall of Fame, but now we need to put those infrastructure pieces in. We have the rock allowance. Probably important that you understand, even though this is a change order, that is still an allowance that we are in control of. Same would be true for the soil disposal. And then to catch up on the schedule, we have put an allowance in there of $500,000 to allow us to catch back up date-wise. The exterior canopy, I've already talked to you about putting that back, $400,000. And then we are now at the go, no-go point of the seating. And so the authority really feels it's important. This is a quality building that will attract quality events that will drive the economy. And we need to put the right seating back in there to finish that out. So in all, this change order is 9.4. The previous GMP was at 102, and this would raise that up to 111. Still completely staying under the 135 that we had talked about. And so some of the next steps coming up, one would be July 19th, we'd come back to you for the approval of change order number 1 so we can keep on pace, and to discuss a bit further the idea of a special district. And then on August 2nd, we would come back to approve the special district and to also approve the second bond as we've outlined it. I do have a representative with me tonight from Holland and Knight. If there are specific legal questions about the special district, they were involved with the Beltline in Atlanta, and I think be very helpful if there are any questions.
Questions? Mike?
Thank you, Kelly, or Mayor, I'm sorry. Thank you, Paul, for being here, and I appreciate what you put here before us. You always seem to do, by however method you do it, to find a way to make things happen, and I appreciate that. I will say this one's caused me a bit concerned, though, and I'm a bit concerned because, well, a bit concerned for a few things. One, you know, when we put this on a SPLOST ballot, part of your biggest boosters and part of your biggest supporters were the hotel industry folks, and you know, I think the story might have been a bit different at that time, and the support might have been a bit different at that time with some folks on the commission and folks in the community, had they known that you would then come back at a later date and ask for a property tax increase to help pay for this. But we'd never done that with the Classic Center before, and I'm real concerned about starting that now to do that. I will say this too, I do see, I'm very, what raises some questions for me are that I think, I don't necessarily, I do have some questions about creating a special district per se county-wide. Most of the ones that you mentioned, and I don't need a legal opinion just yet, I might need it later as we just move, the discussion moves forward, but the concern I have is creating county-wide. The other ones that you mentioned all have an associated district associated with them. The Braves Stadium has the Cumberland Improvement District, the Beltline has the TAD boundaries, and such as that. So does Brookhaven. So at any rate, but we can get into that later. I do have some, if y'all bear with me, I do have some questions on the budgets because, and I have questions because in 2018, when we approved it, it's gone from $81 million all the way up to $136 million right now. And I did vote to increase these along the way, but now it's come to the part where now we're asking property taxpayers to help us on top of the SPLOST dollars that they're already paying for to do this. So I do have some questions about your budget. And one, you mentioned the $2.6 million is in from the state, or 2.8, whatever, from the state for the Georgia Music Hall of Fame. I didn't see that anywhere as a revenue source within your budget.
So the reason I didn't put it in, Mike, is the budget is really for the arena. The idea of the Music Hall of Fame, to display that is going to be roughly $3 million in total.
But the change order asks us to do a Georgia Music Hall of Fame infrastructure. So if it's in the change order, shouldn't it also be, if you're asking us to spend money on it, shouldn't it be in the revenue?
I want you to think about that like conduit and electricity. Those are the basic infrastructure things that we're going to have to do to have the Georgia Music Hall of Fame. The 2.6 is more for the display cases and the like. Interactive exhibit kinds of things. So it will not be a part of the actual budget for the arena.
Okay.
So
Can you tell me
separate.
about the land cost that you have in this budget that we're seeing here today? That's the first time I've seen land costs being put on your,
So if you remember, we purchased the air rights, the ground rights for the railroad going along, all along from East Broad all the way out to Strong Street. And that was the amount of money that we paid to buy those air rights, which are needed to be able to build the
right.
arena.
I guess I'm just wondering why we haven't seen that in one of your budgets previously.
I don't know, we may have called it air rights or railroad or some other thing, but it has always been a part.
Can you tell me what the specialty, this is another one I haven't seen before, specialty consulting in this budget at $1.2 million?
Let me go back to it.
Okay. It's, yeah, right there.
Right there.
I think that is all of the consulting that we had to buy through Perkins and Will, who is the architect. So think about like all the speakers and think about all of the access, key card access, and all of the various systems that operate within the arena and the consultants that pick the very best equipment that could be used to go into this.
Okay. Well, that leads me to the systems, equipment, furnishing, and public art category. In January of this year, the budget for all of that was $4.7 million, and now it adds up to $5.9 million.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that there is escalation through this project. I think we have managed it and looked at it and carefully managed it. Again, I just keep going back to the fact that we are still 132 and not 135 that has been approved.
Okay, and that's up from $81 million. That's up from $81 million in 2018.
Well, and again, if I may, when we first brought this forward with SPLOST, I want to say our request was like $90 million, and we had two different companies that actually priced it at that time. So I don't feel like this escalation is very much different than what other projects are seeing around the country.
Okay. The final question I have, y'all, and I'm sorry, I appreciate y'all allowing me the time here. The special district, just to elaborate on this a little bit, you say that it's, and I see it here, that it starts at $400,000, but it does increase.
It does, by roughly
the-
2%.
Over,
And that's just really the natural escalation of the valuation of the property and how property tax works.
okay, this year is a little bit more.
Yes, I went
So-
very, very conservative
Okay.
over time. I think the average that I looked back was somewhere closer to 8%. But again, I'm building these so that they are super ultra conservative going forward.
Okay, well, and speaking of conservative, the capitalized interest that you have here, the capitalized interest is really, when you're looking at your document here, you're almost borrowing $36 million instead of $30 million because you're deferring all that. So that's just
It's just tough to
point.
pay it until we're out for bid right now on all three projects.
Right.
But it's a life cycle of the project.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get
We
that.
require that it hangs out there for 30 days, and then we get the bids, and then we review the bids, and then they actually have to construct the projects, and then once those projects are constructed, that's really when the revenue stream will start.
But I guess what I'm saying, Paul, is you're borrowing more money than you're actually, if the total sources of funds is $36 million, so you got to pay it back at some point, so it's more than 30.
And I looked at it both ways, Mike. If we just sold the property outright, would that generate more income, or would we be better off doing it the way that I've outlined? And I've asked those hard questions of the financial advisor, and the way we're doing it is still, in his opinion, the very best way forward.
Right. Well, and I think as part of us doing due diligence and being transparent and such as that, the timeframe, again, looking at it is does seem rushed for a very large expenditure and very large, a large project that's going to, have some consequences on a specific business industry here in town. I think time needs to be spent sharing that information and hearing back from people. But also, I think time needs to be spent. I'd like to see what some other options are. I know you can find them. You're good at finding options. And I'd like to see some different options besides, falling back on to property taxpayers, be it hotels, be it whomever. Because one of the things I'm concerned about is if we create this special district, y'all, this will be here for 38 years for one. It limits us. What if we want to use a special tax district on some other program? I know you can raise another millage rate on them. You can do that for sure, but ask ourselves the questions: does it box us in for any future decisions we may need to make on affordable housing or on any other things? Or on some economic development project that may come into town.
Mike,
Or-
if I can.
Hang on, I'm not finished yet. But
It doesn't.
But I know it doesn't, Paul. But it doesn't. But it does make it difficult for us to raise 2 mills now and then 10 years down the road when we need to do something else, raise another 2 mills until this 30 years are up. That's what I'm saying. When you can only do it so many times without getting voted out of office like Tim Lee did in Cobb County. So there's that, and also being representative of the people that we represent. But binding us and binding future commissions to this ought to be a bit of concern. So for those reasons, all of those reasons, the cost, the transparency of it all, I wouldn't mind seeing another option that you could come up with to help meet that special district cost.
I'm happy to brainstorm and come up with other ways. I think as far as the timing goes, we are in a bit of a pickle because we have signed the contract. This thing is a moving construction site, and we do have the SPLOST funding, and we do have the first bond. But at some point in the very near future, we need to move forward.
I understand, but there is still, we still have to do that change order, increasing the cost of the project from 107 to 111. So there's still some things that we need to do. You're spending $500,000 to speed the calendar up, so maybe that could help a little bit. So I'm just saying, rushing it right here in the middle of summer may not be the most transparent thing to do for such a large project. Thank you.
Yeah, so I have a couple of questions clarifying the functionality of a special district. So from what I understand, it allows us to create a county-wide district. It doesn't necessarily have to be geographically specific, or the geographic specificity is the entire county, but it can be specific to a particular business type.
Correct.
And I'm just curious why we haven't used this before. And initially, we had proposed an increase in the hotel motel tax.
Correct.
Which would have directly come from the consumer of those hotel rooms. And this would actually put the financial burden directly on the property owners, who theoretically would just pass that on to the consumers of those hotel rooms.
Correct.
So I'm not all that concerned about one or the other. What I am concerned about, I'm wondering if this would preclude us from creating a future geographically specific special district, say Firefly Trail or Greenway or some corridor. Could we have 2 overlapping ones?
I'm Allison Dyer from Holland, and no offense to Paul, but he misspoke a little bit. The district will not be countywide, it will be specifically each hotel parcel in the county.
Oh,
So it will
okay.
just be those. I think when you meant countywide, you meant all the hotels.
So
But
it's
not the
just
county
specific
itself.
to a type of special,
Correct.
okay.
That's the
So if a new
proposal.
hotel is constructed, that automatically becomes.
You would have to
special
amend the district to include that hotel.
Okay, so every time a new hotel is built, we
Correct.
have to come back and amend it?
Correct.
Okay, so if we were to create other geographically specific special districts, would that create any kind of conflict? Say we create like a Firefly Trail special district and there's hotels within it. Do they double dip, or is that considered double dipping, or?
So, and I'm just speaking under the law, no business advice here, okay? The special districts, they are not limited currently, they're not limited as to how many you can create. You're not limited to what you can levy, how high or how low you go as far as your millage rate. It's a property tax district option used by local governments to finance specific projects or, specific districts.
Yeah, I'm totally aware of the Beltline one.
So they certainly can overlap.
Okay.
It just means increased
So you can
property
have
taxes.
a hotel in, say, a Firefly Trail Special
Absolutely.
District.
In
And that
this-
hotel would be obligated to pay the 2 mills for this as well as whatever millage increase.
Yes, and the way it would work on a tax bill is you would see just your regular tax levy, and then they will have a special district line item.
Okay. But if
For
it
each
were a
special
hotel
district that they're
In a
in.
new special district or a 2 special districts.
Correct.
Okay, and so did I miss that there's like a specific timeline on this for what you need to achieve the revenue?
Yeah, when we did the first bond, we said we'd be coming back for the second bond in September.
No, but I mean the special district itself. If we were to go ahead and create this, is there a termination date for it?
Yeah, I would suspect we would terminate it at the end of this bond.
Okay, so we could go back whenever and terminate it when we felt that it had achieved its purpose.
Just like any other property tax levy, you can reduce it or increase it at any
Okay.
time if you find some other source of revenue.
Okay, so it is flexible and say, it is creating more revenue than we anticipated, we could reduce the mills or?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Jesse?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm sitting here, and I appreciate you reaching out to try to give us a heads up on this as well, Paul, so we could chew on the general ideas. But I'm sitting here concerned a bit about rushing into. I'd like to have a more clearly written out understanding of what's constraining us to a given time frame, what's constraining the project, and definitely some more information on how these special districts work. I have some more questions that we can maybe get into here about that, but it just seems like a very large new thing to take on. This body deliberated TADs for millennia, it seemed like, before that passed. And so I just hesitate to jump so quickly into something else that's, I think, also, it just needs more time, at least for me to feel comfortable with it. The other thought I have, I guess, is just as this continues to move forward and the escalating costs keep going up for the arena, and we keep trying to find ways to make good on the commitment that was captured in SPLOST, I continue to also think about the need to fund the people who do work in the Classic Center and will be working in the arena, and to capture in some kind of formal, explicit way a commitment to a wage structure that mirrors the commitment we've made in other county-funded departments, and that we've seen happen with the library now recently as well. Putting a lot of money into a building that's going to generate a lot of revenue for industries that typically don't pay people a living wage. The more we get asked to find more ways to use more public money to pay for it, the more I feel dissatisfied with that parallel circumstance. So I don't know how entirely germane that is to a revision of the IGA or anything else that's forthcoming from the Classic Center, but I do hope that becomes a more explicit part of the conversation between this body and the Classic Center moving forward. I guess my one question I'll just add to the function of special districts while we have this expert here, and thank you for being here. Is in terms of the function of it, we have all these oversight boards and things for TADs. How does a special district have any kind of functional
oversight.
Administrative oversight? Okay, and so it's
The
just
city council is the oversight, just as you are with all other property taxes.
okay.
And you could certainly create a committee to oversee it, but by law, no, you don't have to.
Okay. And then, sorry, I guess how are we defining hotel Because the hotel motel tax generates revenue from things like Airbnbs, and I think my understanding is this wouldn't be applied to every Airbnb in town, right? So it's kind of.
Correct,
yeah.
that, right now, we're just looking at hotels proper and not Airbnbs.
Okay, thanks.
Tim?
Thank you, Mayor, and yeah, thanks for being here, Paul, and presenting. So, couple questions. First one, I guess to get this out of the way. You had an item about restoring the seating back to the original capacity. Is that the 5,500 number, or what number is that?
It's not so much the capacity as it is the quality of the seats themselves. When we were cutting to try to get down, at one point, we reduced it all the way down to just plastic seating throughout. And this is putting the cushions back on the seats as we originally had them.
Okay. So more the quality of the seats. Okay.
Correct.
And yeah, so then moving on to Special Services District. I guess with the 2 mills bringing in the 400,000, of course, and which Mike points out is going to escalate. I guess I'm a little concerned with, the number of times that we've had to come back here to kind of revisit this budget. And knowing that we're likely not at the end of seeing cost escalation. Would it make more sense that if we were going to take, and I do also have concerns I think we need to really dig into, really think about on this, but would it be more prudent for us to be going for something over 2 mills just to make sure that we're not ending back here again for who knows how many times?
That's, a decision I think you and the commission have to make jointly. I do feel good about sort of where we are and where we're going. I think that a large part of the second bond increase and the need for the additional revenues has a lot more to do with, just rate increase and the fact that the second bond had to be 100% taxable bond as we understand it right now. So I think more than anything, those 2 factors have led to increasing that second bond. But I sort of feel like the sooner we can make the decision on the second bond, the better it will be for you, given where we're going with rates at the moment.
Okay. And then, I guess following up the question that Commissioner Link had, so then what would be, if when new hotels and motels are built, I understand the revisiting, does that literally mean that we have to we'd have to take a new vote and revisit the actual structure and the shape, I guess, of the service district and actually altering it every time?
Correct. You'd adopt a supplement to the ordinance creating the district to add in the new property.
Okay.
So, and that way, also if one is demolished and becomes a neighborhood, you would remove it in the same manner.
So I guess I'm kind of curious about the process of that. For something that's going to be existing for 38 years, I have to imagine that the hotel motel stock is probably going to change quite a bit over 38 years here.
27.
Yeah. So I'm guessing possibly there'd be some kind of, that we could write this into the structure if we're going to do this again, that I don't know, at a certain, January 1st of every year or something like that, we are revisiting and redrawing this or I don't know. This seems like that's a bit of a complicated, that's something that's going to change drastically. Yeah. I don't know. Just throwing that out there, but definitely seems
Got a
complex.
couple folks who haven't spoken yet, Carol and then Russell.
Yeah, one, just as a technical aid for us, as Commissioner Hamby was asking you those questions about previous budgets, and and I'm looking at this, and it's just there's so many numbers. I would really like some sort of comparative, longitudinal, so I can understand where we've gone through in these budgets, so I don't have to go find the work session thing, and I would really appreciate that. Each presentation, in a spreadsheet, that's where it is, and new lines added. I appreciate your creativity in all this, because you've done it, I've seen you do it again and again, and actually siding with, adding to Commissioner Hool, I'm hopeful that you'll be as creative as well when we start, in terms of the, a livable, keeping up with that wage floor for all these people involved here. I do feel like this is a big decision to make, and although I appreciate the thoroughness of your presentation, I kind of would like a second opinion. I don't know how that happens on these special districts, which we've never heard about. I'm wondering if our attorney or someone within our government can lay out what these are and how they can be used, and if this is the only way, is this a new tool? And likewise, on the hotel, we did have the hotel owners in agreement of the hotel motel tax or supportive of the arena, and I would like their input as well on the number. Is this $1.50? Is this something, you're saying that they can live with it? I'd like sort of a second opinion and input on that as well. Right?
Yeah, I think it's only fair that I say their opinion would not be to move forward with this.
Okay.
They would be very opposed to this. I have talked to them. They don't like the idea of their property tax going up. They don't want their property tax going up. My showing you what they would have to do to raise the overall price was just so that you would have that as background general knowledge of how they could mitigate this particular 2 mills going in.
And so this, in terms of, in contrast to the hotel motel tax, where it would be added on and the state would collect it and give it to us, they're going to have to make internal adjustments.
They would, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Russell?
Thank you. One number jumped out at me about the toxic dirt that we're cleaning up there. Is what, 2.4 million? And was Georgia Power?
So
Georgia
again,
Power's
I think it's important that
Atlantic
I
Gas
remind
Line?
you that's an allowance.
Yeah.
And the way that property came to be owned by you was that Georgia Power went in there and cleaned it all up.
Okay.
They cleaned it up, and they did a great job of
Okay.
cleaning that property up.
All right.
Before they transferred it over to you, and they are still with us as we
Okay.
are going forward. But that's an allowance because there is a significant amount of dirt that does have to be removed and a significant amount of rock that has to come out of there.
You're going down.
And when you blast, you just don't always know exactly what you're going to find. So we are looking at all of that, and we know what it would cost to transfer to a lined landfill for appropriate disposal. And that is the engineer's very best guess at what could be. It could be significantly less than that, but we just don't know yet.
Do we have any, do you have any information from the hoteliers about this proposal?
Yeah, I have talked to them briefly, I will tell you. And again, part of that rationale is the timing,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's important that you all remember this.
I mean, I just feel like if we could get something, if some of the hoteliers would say, or the Athens Hotel Association, hey, we validate this, we
I think
understand
I
that
can
this is
assure
needed
you-
for the construction of the arena,
I can assure you they will not.
Okay.
They
Well-
would not be for this.
Well, one other idea that I had is maybe we create a district around the arena. Is that, you maybe have explored that? I mean, I'm just looking at the assessments of the Mark, the Eclipse, 909. I mean, we get there with those same numbers. I mean, the Mark is assessed at 157 million. 2 mills on that's about 300,000.
Again, I think a couple of people have talked about creativity, and the fact of the matter is, I believe there's probably 5 ways to get to the same place
I
at the
guess
end of
the
the
thing that
day.
jumped out about me about some of those properties is they were sort of cut out of the Athens Downtown Development Authority, so they're already sort of enjoying a discount of downtown living, not paying a mill. So,
I mean, a lot of that is entirely up to you. I just didn't want to bring you a problem without bringing you a
Well,
solution.
Mr. Mayor, I mean, I would posit, I'd like to put forward that as a possible solution. Maybe we could explore, creating a district, with contiguous properties directly around the arena. And I think we can make the case these properties are going to benefit. They're right next to a beautiful arena with cushioned seats. So, maybe you can help us with that, put something together for us, Paul? We can, if the mayor and my colleagues are open to it.
Well, thank you, Mayor.
Mike and then Jesse before we move on to the next
Yeah,
one.
I won't take too long. I appreciate it. And I'll say this, I mean, hearing the logistics of the district and it being parcel by parcel throughout the county is a bit, I don't know, a bit not confusing, but I'm just wondering about the, just what sort of precedent we're setting by doing that. And I think this commission ought to think about consequences like that. I mean, what's to stop a future commission from putting a special tax district on all bars in the community, or all whatever type of business you want to put a special tax district on, and doing it that way. And then on top of that, the fact that if a hotel gets torn down or something that's got to come, it gets off the tax rolls, or if a new one gets built, we got to vote on the whole new district all over again. Certainly what Paul is doing down there is creating a district that is going to be economic development, and maybe looking within that district that creates that economic development is where you get the revenues to help pay for the $136 million bond. You'll be building two new structures down there that'll generate property or taxes of some. We own the land or you own the land, but they'll pay property taxes. One of them's going to be a hotel. So not only are you special districting all the hotels, you're going to create another hotel to compete against all the other hotels that you've put two mills on top of. I'm just trying to understand the fairness of it all, y'all. Not only just for hotels, but other future things that come our way from that standpoint. But I think Commissioner Edwards is on to something. I think if you look at those two structures that you're building and what the property taxes will generate in those two structures, I mean, heck, I don't mind. I mean, if we look at just what's our share of it? What is the property tax? 13.05? Is that what we decided on? We lowered the property tax this year. Now we're discussing it, raising it for some. So look at the 13.5, what those two structures would generate in property taxes, and that's part of the special district. So at any rate, I'm hopeful that there's some alternatives we can look at. Thank you.
Jesse.
Thank you. I'm sorry, the special use district expert in the audience. I don't recall your name.
Allison Dyer.
Allison. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Allison Dyer.
My husband is Jesse.
Good name. Could you share a bit what, if any, requirements there are around how counties can and cannot choose properties or define, like we're just saying hotels. And I see here that there's examples of like the Beltline, within the Beltline TAD, or tax on commercial properties, which I'm assuming applies to zoning. I mean, how hyper-specific can we be? Are there legal concerns that someone would, lay a claim against us for putting an undue burden on them or targeting them or something?
You do obviously have to make sure that you abide by, the uniformity of taxation rules, which is why I wouldn't suggest creating a district of disparate types of properties and not including, so you include one multifamily unit but not the one across the street or something like that, because those are the same type of property that have to, by law, be taxed in the same manner. But as far as picking and choosing which types of property to include in your district, there is precedent that that's acceptable. I think the good news for local governments is that the Constitution grants you a broad power to do this. Do I think that the state legislature might try and pull that back a little? Maybe, right? There's 6 lines about these special districts in the Georgia Constitution. So a lot of it is, as you all have been discussing, left up to the cities to what's equitable in their communities.
When was it enacted?
I can't answer that question, but I could find out for you.
Okay, yeah, I'd just be curious to understand the history of how new this is.
It's fairly new. And it's really only kind of caught on recently.
Okay. And then I guess last question for now. When you talk about targeting types, can you target like if we wanted to say target multifamily housing like another community did, can you say only multifamily housing that's of a certain value or that has a certain number of units or where the rent is an average amount? So like.
That would make me nervous, but we could look into that. It would have to do, it'd be easy to divide them up if they're zoned differently, because then theoretically they're different types. But if you're just basically making choices to tax the kind of higher rent properties, I think you have an issue.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Paul.
I'd like to hear, not tonight, but some comments from our attorney on all of this.
Would you like just a kind of memo outlining
Sure.
sort of overview of this mechanism? That's something you can do, Judd. Okay.
Now, I will say this is not something that I've had experience with in my career. I do understand that it's something that's been used by the governments recently, is my understanding. Obviously, Holland and Knight is the firm that was, that Paul has brought forth. I mean, at some point, I would want a resolution where you retain them to do this, because I don't have the expertise to enact this program. I mean, this is a specialized area. They were hired by the Beltline. They were hired, or I guess City, I'm not sure who did that project. They were hired by Brookhaven. I mean, it's no different. And so, I'll be glad to write a memo discussing, my thoughts relative to it. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm not an expert in this area. And I've already made very clear to Paul that I'd want a resolution where you agree to retain the services of Holland and Knight to do this.
Outside counsel.
Outside
to do some other
counsel.
Specialized work.
Well, I think what we're looking for, Judd, is there another opinion out there besides what we're hearing from the Classic Center Authority attorney?
All right. I will try and do what I can with that.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all. I appreciate you coming out.
Thank you.
All right, we have two sales tax funded projects that we're going to be looking at. The first is going to be Bishop Park, and then we're going to look at the Prince Avenue corridor through TSPLOST.
Do we want to wait for Commissioner Hull to come back?
We'll go ahead and proceed.
All right. For those of you that know me or don't know me, my name's Daniel Garren. I'm one of the SPLOST project administrators. I think I met a few of you out in various places, especially the Costa building. Also today with me is David Young, the design professional from Lowe's Design. They're the ones that put this schematic design proposal together and assisted with the project concept. They will also be ones that will help develop the construction administrative documents or construction documents and work us through with the construction administrative progress. Also want to point out we have Kent Kilpatrick, Director of Leisure Services, here with us today too. But it's my privilege this afternoon to come before you and present the SPLOST 2020 Bishop Park Improvement Project. The schematic design. The schematic design itself really is kind of more tailored towards the pool and the ancillary structures that's associated with the pool itself. The idea behind it is to provide necessary infrastructure to provide adequate learning, recreational swim, and competitive swimming that currently serves the community in the area. We'll briefly touch on the project history, initial project statement, take a look at, I'll briefly explain some of the site plan, the floor plan, how we got the public input that we received back from the schematic design that we presented, touch on the project budget schedule, and then we'll finish it out with questions. I'm not going to go through all of the project history. I'll kind of touch really the highlights. So the project, or the pool was constructed in the summer of '77. It did receive a shell and equipment significant overhaul in 1998, as well as some additional pool improvements in 2014. So there have been various points over the history of this pool that has created some, that has done some updates and some repairs, but we believe it's finally come to its useful life. It does have a significant leak problem at the moment that the Leisure Services is bearing that burden right now. So May 10th of 2020, the user group did approve the schematic design, which is what we were presenting to you today, and that did go out for public output. And that particular event was from May 16th to June 6th, and I'll kind of discuss that a little bit later in the presentation. The project, initial project statement, a lot of this was based on the master plan, and the idea was to reconstruct the aquatics area, the pool, ancillary structures, splash pad, the restrooms, the pavilion, and potentially the playground, depending on the funds that were available. I'm going to go through some of the characteristics of the existing pool. It's approximately 9,600 square feet of surface area. There are 8 25-yard lanes and 6 50-yard lanes. The 25-yard lanes do have diving blocks at those current locations. There are 2 diving boards. It does have a maximum occupancy of 250 individuals. In the presentation that you guys received from us earlier, I think it was last week, it said 100, but that was during the COVID during COVID. One of the things I will point out that this pool currently does not have ADA access, accessible stairs or a ramp. That it only has ladders that that currently go into the pool. So a brief description of the site plan. The proposed schematic design, our intent is to completely renovate the interior and exterior of the pool house, the ticket and office booth that is currently there, and also add a equipment room or pool house or pump house on the north part of the property where the existing pump house is currently located. But one of the big improvements here is ADA access that the current site does not have to the pool. So what we've done is there's the current drop-off loop that is located in the area that we have the new ADA access ramp, taking that piece of property and creating that ADA access ramp along with 3 additional handicap parking spaces. If you notice in the bottom sort of right corner, I believe it's item number 13, we still had retained a little bit of area for some of the patrons to come in, pull off, drop their kid off in the safe spot so they can, so that the kid could go to the pool, and then so the parent can return, park the vehicle and return. The pool orientation, I'll start in the top right corner and work my way counterclockwise or clockwise. So one of the new rooms really for this project is the pump room. It will house the mechanical equipment, chemical storage, and also allow space for pool equipment storage during the off season. One of the things we felt with this was not only keep the pool equipment out of the elements, but also separate the chemical storage that's currently in the existing facility, take that out of there, put it in the new building. And what that does is remove the chemicals from occupied areas, also reducing the the potential for, the patrons' exposure to chemicals. Now, there currently hasn't been an issue with that, but it's more or less to mitigate that particular risk. The lap pool itself, for proposing an 8-lane, 25-yard lap pool with diving blocks, it does have a depth of, I'll explain a little bit about the actual details of that pool here in a little bit. The pool does have a transition area from what we call the recreational pool to the competitive, or to the lap pool. That transition area does house the ADA access, or the stairs, as well as a pool lift in that particular area. The recreational pool, which is item number 4, it does have a 0 entry pool entrance. We are providing some new shade structures and seating around the pool area. The ones that are in red and in blue, those are not permanent structures, but they are not easily movable. One of the things that was brought to our attention was we didn't want the patrons to move that around the pool structure, but again, they're not permanent. There will be a perimeter fence around the pool. And in addition to that, there are new shade structures on the north with bleachers and seating. It was placed there more or less kind of designed to keep the afternoon sun out of some of the, especially during competitive events that are done in the afternoon, keep the sun out of the viewing of the parents. So a little bit about some further details about the pool itself. Really this is a tool for leisure services to do several different things and to serve several different different types of aquatic things. So one of them is when we talk about introductory to water for the youth, that was one of the things that we looked at and proposed the 0 entry part of this pool. It would allow the toddlers, the infants, to be able to, it was their introductory into the pool, or introductory into the water. Then the recreational pool gradually deepens to about 4 feet, where that transition area is between the rec pool and the lap pool. The other thing that it also provides, it provides a safe area for kids to swim at various depths throughout this pool. One of the things that Leisure Services does very well is teaching children how to swim. In the lap pool area, 2/3 of that pool is at a 4-foot depth, which is really ideal for the instructor. Typically, we've actually consulted with Lost Design, and their pool consultant had said that 4 feet is generally the nationwide standard for that the trainer, that swim instructor. In addition to the lap pool on the diving block section, the depth of that pool is 6'7", which is the required depth for diving from starting blocks. That is a national standard for competitive swimming, and we stayed at that depth because there's no fear of that really changing in the future. But as I said before, 3/4 of this the lap pool is at 4 feet, so it also allows for recreational swimming. It does allow for lap swimming, and does allow for recreational swimming at the same time. Now for the interior renovations of the pool house itself. So most of the floor layout will remain the same. There's some changes that we'll kind of point out as an additional faucet inside the women's restroom, and that's really to bring the current the building up to code when we talk about bather load, and I'll point that out here in a minute. Fresh floor or fresh paint, refinish the flooring, add some non-slip floorings in some of the wet areas, but also add a dry changing area in those shower areas so that the patrons don't have to step outside of the shower area and dry, kind of give them a little more privacy. One of the other things, like I said before, we're taking that mechanical equipment and that chemical equipment out of the existing facility, changing that space into storage and possibly lifeguard locker room. The office and ticket booth renovation is very similar to the existing pool house. Really, it's, all the interior and exterior paint improvements to try to update the facility. One of the things we'll do here is add new fixtures, cabinetry, and equipment to support this room. It does have a roll-up doors on each side, so it does allow an opportunity for leisure services to sell drinks or snacks at this building if it is desired. The pool house, like I said before, it's taking that mechanical equipment and the chemical out of the existing building, putting in a new structure. And the purpose for that is, again, like to mitigate the risk between the chemical and human reaction. Will also allow for additional storage for the pool cover, pool ropes, lifeguard stands, shade equipment, and any other types of things that they choose to put in there. The public input, like I said, we released that on May 16th, and it ended on June 5th. There was a total of 148 responses and was released on various social media accounts to the public. There were 3 in-person forums that were held for Bishop Park. It was May 24th, the 29th, and June 5th. What we gathered from a lot of the public comments from that survey, I posted most of them here, but they would prefer more lap lanes, the diving boards. They did appreciate the building upgrades for the facility, the zero entry section for the children, improved shading, and the pool shape, as well as the attention to the ADA access upgrades. For the revenue, this project had $4.9 million total revenue for this project. We were able to, based on this current design, we've got 3.8 allocated for construction. Now, with concerns to the public input during the master plan, project concept, and schematic design public input, we felt that it would be in their best interest to add bid alternates for the additional 2 lanes, the diving boards, and the potential splash pad. It does come with an additional cost, which we projected here, but ideally, we tried to maximize the amount of pool surface to also match the community needs as well with the budget provided. Next steps and project schedule. This will be coming back to Mayor and Commission on August 2nd for schematic design, Mayor Commission approval. The intent is to try to complete the design development drawings in November and finalize the construction drawings December this year. We'd like to have contractor selected in January with a construction start date in February. There will be one single pool closure season, which will be in the summer of 2023, and then with the expectation of having the pool completed in operation in the early season of 2024. And we projected it in February, which should give us enough time for the pool to neutralize, because it will be a cementatious pool with a plaster liner.
Sure. Thank you. Appreciate the presentation.
Yep.
and appreciate the effort and the work y'all have put into this. I will say this: I've gotten some calls about the lap lanes, and so I'm very much interested in the bid alternate, and I'm also interested in the splash pad stuff. I know those are very popular and
Yes.
over in Rock Springs and at Virginia Walker Park. The concern I have though too is, with the pool shrinking in size in square footage, it does kind of limit the ability for folks to, or does it limit the ability for folks to do the swimming lessons that I know about 250 kids go through each summer to learn how to swim. I do appreciate the ADA accessible and all that, but I'm just wondering about shrinking a pool when more pools are needed.
Kent, you want to speak to that?
And actually, that's all a scheduling issue. Our swim team activity takes place in the evenings, both practice and their meets. So during the day, we intentionally schedule a lot of the swim lessons at Bishop because it's closed for that purpose and it can handle the magnitude of it. However, because of the water quality issues we're suffering through right now, we've already begun to spread more swim lessons to our other 4 pools, and they can accommodate some of those. So it really just becomes a scheduling issue based on the number of lessons we currently do.
Have you heard it? Did you hear any concerns about shrinking the pool down square footage wise in the public comment?
In terms of an operation standpoint, that's I think that's what Kent kind of addressed.
So the public wants to keep the pool the same size, but for
They would-
operations.
they would definitely prefer for it to be larger, but-
That's what I'm hearing, I guess.
And so would we if the budget allowed.
Right.
So would we. But I've spoken at length to Jonathan Fogg, who's the head coach for the Dolphins swim. And in the past few weeks, I've been to a practice one evening to watch and talk to people out there at practice. And then last week, went to their first swim meet and talked to people and wanted to watch some more of their current operations. It's their biggest impact for them, who have been the most vocal about this project, is on their practice sessions. Actually, 8 lanes is standard for a swim meet, and they're fine for swim meet operations. When it comes to practice, they currently operate with not just those 8 lanes that are 25 yards, but they operate with 15 lanes that are 15 yards long. Or excuse me, 13 lanes that are 15 yards long in the deep end and the shallow. So they have the ability to put a lot of kids practicing at once and can knock all their practice out in an hour and a half to 2 hours. Under this design, their practice is going to have to go longer in the evening, which he's concerned about staffing issues for that, was what Jonathan told me was his concern. And of course, parents being upset that practice takes so much longer because you have less space to handle it.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. I mean, no, well, I can't.
What
I
the design does
mean,
do is give
those-
some flexibility, because you may have heard, and if you're not, you will hear, a lot of people that always commented about not having access to that pool during the week. It's only on weekends because of all the swim lessons. What that recreational component of the pool does is allow us to open that up during the week. Swim lessons can be going on in the lap pool at the same time that we're able to bring the public in to the recreational side of the pool. And that's just, again, an operations and management issue.
Okay, thank you.
Patrick?
Okay, so I think Hamby hit on this, but I was looking through, lovely presentation, by the way. So the capacity size is shrunk, it's been shrunk. Is that the right word, shrunk? Shrink or shrunk?
The size of the pool has gotten smaller.
And, well, the amount of users who can use this space.
Actually, it's gone up. I believe it's up to 449 occupants for the new pool design.
Okay.
Up from 250, that's correct.
So, this is gonna be, so I've just listened to constituents, they're noticing the kids out there. Any possibility for a jacuzzi for adults that's pointed out there? I was asked.
We got to get the splash pad done first.
A jacuzzi or a hot tub?
Hot tub, jacuzzi.
Jacuzzi has the jets, it's more expensive.
Okay, well, but that's it, just the capacity size, thank you.
Get a hot tub.
Yeah, I have a few questions. First of all, thank you for the presentation. It's awesome, and I like the direction this is going. The 2014 overhaul, it was resurfaced in 2014, and then water loss became significant. Was that any kind of like malfunction of the overhaul, or, I mean, was that overhaul meant to prevent that kind of water loss?
At that particular time, we did add some stainless steel pool gutters to that, and it is very possible that that could have been attributed to that. But the company that was there that actually installed that did extensive efforts trying to find out where that leak was, and it very well could have been prior to the pool gutter installation. That's when, well, the way I understand it, that's when it was noticed.
After that, those improvements were made.
I'm sorry, say that
The
again?
leak got significant after those improvements were made.
To what I understand, they've gradually gotten worse over time.
Okay.
And Kent, you had,
Yeah.
Well, it has, and it was, a portion that we determined years later was attributed to that new gutter installation, but not all of it. As, you know, it's a 50-year-old pool.
Yeah.
So some of it's just through the sheer wear and tear of that pool. But you all are operating on numbers, I believe last year or a little year ago, we came to you with 10,000 gallons a day that was leaking, which is the number that a lot of people said. It's pushing 30,000 gallons a day now. So it's significant. We have found water after taking out chunks of concrete to repair a leak from a faucet that water's all under the concrete pad that's there. So it's a significant leak, and we're anxious to stop at that really soon.
Melissa, any questions about this?
Yeah, actually, are there the bleachers? I don't see bleachers on the
they
plan.
were underneath the yellow shading.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure that those were there for the competition. I'm curious about swim team practice in the morning. I grew up in swim team, and we always practiced early in the morning. I mean, that could solve some of the conflict issues that you're having.
I think that gets back to the staffing issue and coaches being available to have other jobs, as well as Jonathan and the head coaches that have other positions.
Okay.
So that's why we take the master's lap swims and the other learn to swim classes early in the day, so they can have the evenings for you.
Oh, so the splash pad, it's not on this design. Is it intended for another area?
It will likely be in the general vicinity of the pool, because it also has to share restroom facilities.
Okay.
It is a separate body of water, so I mean, that is one of the reasons why it contributed to that substantial amount cost.
Okay. I mean, I'm adamant that a splash pad or even some kind of stationary fountain that functions as a splash pad.
And part of the compromise, adding the zero entry pool, was to try to facilitate that a little bit. There is the potential to add some water shader or water jets in that particular area, so that there is some opportunity there that does share some of the same features as the splash pad.
So would the splash pad be able to be open when the pool is not open? I know we've had problems opening the pool because we don't have the lifeguard staff, but the splash pad doesn't necessarily need that. And also our pools are kind of confined to that Memorial Day, Labor Day time period, whereas a splash pad or more stationary fountain could be open, from April to October or whatever. Is that is that direction being considered at all?
So we've given it some thought in the early part of the design. Again, we kind of set it aside because it was a budgetary issue. Now, we're not really, it's not location dependent. It could be in a couple different areas around the pool. Ideally, what we're looking for is to put it in a location that it's close to the pump room that showed, and it also has to be near some restroom facilities for that, which can be shared with the existing pool.
Okay.
Commissioner Lee, we can create, based on design, a separate entrance just for that.
Okay.
And then it could be fenced in separately, so if it's completely separated from the larger body of water, it could operate independently.
I mean, I'm a fan of a splash pad that doesn't require a fence at all, that can be utilized openly for a longer period of the year and just turned off in the off-season. I have one more question. While I have leisure services in the room, have you considered lap lanes at Lake Chapman?
Lap lanes at Lake Chapman?
Yeah, along the back of the swimming area.
We have not, but it's come up before. People really want to do long swimming. They want to swim across the lake.
Yeah.
which, so we already struggle with people that take off across that lake and think they can swim and make it. And we're
can't
having
swim.
to.
How you gonna
assure
swim
them
laps
that,
in a lake?
No, you can't, you're not the swimmer, you may think you are.
Well, I'd encourage a couple lap lanes.
No, you
along
get,
the
but you
back
gotta
end.
see the bottom where you're going.
No, I grew up swimming in the lake. My mom, that's her favorite place to swim is in the lake.
Not
Any other questions
competitively.
pertinent to this project?
That would be awesome.
Oh,
Carol.
Lap lanes.
Quick questions. But do we have the public input? I've had a couple of people ask me some stuff, and I know at times we've gotten some sort of data access to the public input. I just had someone talking to me recently about having this be a larger, more competitive pool and what was needed. So I'm just curious about what that larger, if I could see that, if that's readily available somehow.
Public input
Yeah,
comments?
yeah, the
I'll be
comments.
glad to send you a link
Yeah, that would be
shows
great.
all 149.
Okay, and also just so I understand this, the pool is getting smaller because the budget doesn't allow us to make a bigger pool, or because we don't anticipate having the staff to operate a larger pool?
It's the budget.
You mean the operation? Or
No,
the budget,
capital.
the budget of the.
The capital budget to
The
build
capital
it.
budget, okay, great. So that's helpful as well. If that little thing could be any bigger, I'd love it, but I really, really, really appreciate the shade. I think that's wonderful. So I think that's a great addition, and we need to make sure we have that as, many places as we can in the pools. That's where I decide to go to a pool. And the zero gravity, great for the little kids.
Tim?
Zero gravity?
Zero gravity, zero.
Man,
entry.
we are.
It's zero gravity.
We are
zero-
forward thinking. We're just
Lunar pool. It's the pool.
nobody.
Zero gravity. Float.
That would be very helpful as well. Zero.
Very powerful jets.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I appreciate y'all, and I think what we're seeing here and what we've heard from the community, right, is that we have a lot of fantastic pools in this county. We do. Actually, my daughter just a little while ago probably finished up her lesson at Rock Springs for her kinder swim, so doing fantastic stuff there. But the Bishop Park one is the big pool. It is kind of the nicest one we have, the competition, and I do think it's important for us to keep that pool at being able to operate at that higher level for more special events. And can you go back to I know we had the mounts there for if we did the extra 2 lane, yeah. So the extra additional 2 lanes. So right now, and this one also has no diving boards.
That is
currently,
correct.
Okay. Honestly, what I would say to all of my colleagues here is, previous to this discussion, right, we heard very creative, and we heard a lot of creative ways for us to find funding to do other things that maybe these pools are amazingly important, especially for lower income families and stuff. It just gives you a place for these kids to go during the summers. They are packed. They are awesome. These kids are having a blast, and it's keeping them out of trouble, and they're very valuable, even though they're only used part of the year. I think it is, and I support and advocate that we would actually add the additional $1.16 million, find that funding so that we can have a splash pad. I also totally need to have a splash pad. Again, the Rock Springs one, the way that's set up, where you have the splash pad area, it's fantastic for parents with younger kids, and the older kids can be on the pool. It makes a lot of sense. And the diving boards, I think, are needed for a pool especially like this, and for the 2 additional lanes. This is the only competitive pool that we have in the entire county. I think since we're going to be doing all of this work, why wouldn't we go so far? This pool has now served us since 1977, correct? So what is that, 45 years? So we're talking about a pool that we're probably going to have for 45 years here. Why would we only go 60% of the way or 70% of the way? Let's go all the way so we have a pool that's actually going to serve this community as the way it needs to for the next 45 years. And we can do that by spending an extra $1.16 million. So I highly push that we go ahead and incorporate those bottom 3 bid alternates, and not have that as be alternate, but have that actually be part of what we're asking for, and then we find the money to do so.
Russ, I I agree. I think, I'd like to see the pool larger. I was wondering if if the splash pad could be something added on later. I mean, do we have to spend all the money on a splash pad right now? We've got the zero entrance part. Can we just build the best possible pool we can get right now and maybe phase in a splash pad in a few years?
You definitely could if you're keeping the splash pad as a completely separate entity outside of the existing pool deck. If you're bringing it into the pool deck, you're gonna have a lot of piping concerns.
Yeah.
You wanna keep, if you're building in that pool deck, you're gonna wanna keep all that filtration in one space. And
Could-
that filtration enclosure
yeah.
is part of that extra cost.
Could we plumb for it now?
Yeah, we could, it's not that difficult to put in the infrastructure to be able to support that.
Yeah, just the drain pipes and the
Yep.
supply?
But that would be most of the cost of it. That, would be probably about 50% of your cost at that point.
Would be-
And in all honesty, with how intricate some of those pieces are now,
Yeah.
you would be limiting yourself to what you can do in that splash pad.
Yeah.
There's certain pieces that they've got pumps and feeders that run the programming on how they operate. So you can
Yeah.
definitely pre-plumb for some most items.
Yeah.
You may not be able to get the nicest feeders to come around and build the splash pad. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, yeah, if we could maybe plumb, as standard a size as we can that could accommodate the greatest amount of fixtures.
Jesse?
Thank you, Mayor. A few hopefully quick questions. The first is actually on this slide. The 2 diving boards at $50K a pop. Could someone just explain how diving boards cost so much?
Yeah.
Yeah, so currently the pool depth at its deepest point is 6 foot 7 inches. You have to be 12 foot deep minimum for diving. So we are not only incurring the cost of the diving board, but now you have to add the cost of the extra concrete to build the extra depth. You're doubling the depth at that point.
Okay.
And it also brings more water, which increases your filter size and your pump horsepower, so.
Awesome. Great. Thank you for that explanation. Totally makes sense. The trees that are shown, so I too love the shade structures, and generally this design I think is really fantastic. The trees that are shown on there, are those aspirational growths of what will be newly planted trees for the most part, or are those actual existing trees? I was trying to sort of Google Earth what I'm imagining goes here, and it looks like
If you're
those
seeing
are.
trees on there, they're existing, they're not.
Okay.
Trees and pools don't mix,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, so we try to keep the trees away from pools.
Okay.
As much as I love putting trees in all the places I can,
Cool.
that's a
It is.
request directly for maintenance.
Yeah, it's a maintenance nightmare.
And then, has solar been considered for any of these structures, or at least the new structure? Thinking about our SPLOST sustainability pot of money.
It has not for this particular project.
Okay. I mean, there's some electricity being used in each of those buildings, I'm assuming. Is that right?
And we can definitely take a look at that.
Yeah, I'd just be curious. I mean, we have that separate, bucket of money for sustainability, and if there's a way to incorporate solar while we're doing all this work, that to me would make sense. And then just my last, I have trouble following the numbers on the capacity issue. So like what I gathered from the slides here is we're going from 9,675 square feet down to 6,500. The slideshow says there's currently 100 patrons, and we'd be going up to 449. I heard one of y'all say we currently have 250
It's
capacity.
250. Yeah, it was
Okay.
reduced to 100 during COVID, but
Okay.
but the true maximum occupancy for the existing pool is 250.
Okay, so could you just help me understand, so hopefully I can convey forward, like how are we fitting more people in a smaller
I'll
pool?
let you explain that.
Yes, and actually, if you bring the diving boards back, the current capacity will drop. Its full capacity is calculated based on area of water, but it's broken up into 0 to 5 feet, 5 to 8 feet, and then once you pass 8 feet, it's like 1 to 25, 1 to 30 square foot per person, because when you have diving wells and really deep water, you generally don't have as many people using it. So it's a somewhat complicated, it's a fairly straightforward formula, but there's
Okay.
3 distinct areas in the existing pool that we're looking at, and only 2 distinct areas with much tighter ratios than those pools. So that
Okay.
just yields a higher occupancy.
So the kind of ironic good news here is that when we're talking about capacity of this pool, even if we don't expand the size from this design, we're actually fitting more people
As long as
in
you
this
put
pool.
the diving wells back.
Unless we put the diving wells back. The $50,000 diving boards, yeah, okay. Thank you.
Patrick and Melissa.
So I'm in this concept of let's go big or go home. This is a very widely used pool, community benefit. I understand we are budget constrained for 4.9 million, but piggybacking off of Commissioner Disson, let's find the money to make more lanes, to add in the diving pool. And any idea of like planters? I understand like tree leaves are a nightmare, but like this, would planters be something that would be a potential for this pool? But, you know, just sticking to like,
So, I've done a number of pools, and typically if we're gonna put something green in a pool, it's still artificial turf.
okay.
It's all stuck in a fence, which makes maintaining those areas a lot more difficult than it would be out in the yard.
Visit Florida Park Pool and you'll know exactly what we're talking about.
Okay.
It's a maintenance nightmare over there.
Melissa?
Yeah, coming back to the splash pad, I would like to see a cost estimate for not your traditional splash pad like we have here with all the mechanical doohickeys, which I imagine is pretty expensive and a lot of maintenance and upkeep on something like that. But something more like the fountain they have in Coolidge Park, which is stationary, like concrete sculptures that are spewing water, and like in Centennial Park where the water's coming up. And those are, yeah, those are open more year round. They seem like they would be a lot lower maintenance. They're not as intricate, but quite frankly, they're just as fun. Like kids will have some fun with some water shooting out of the ground. They don't need the doohickeys with the buckets dumping on them or anything. That might be a way to get closer to the budget and even have something that's a little more unique to our community if you have a sculptural element to it.
Do you want to kind of talk about what really the cost is for
Yeah,
the
so
splash pad?
The biggest cost on the splash pad, if you're doing a splash pad that's decent size, we're looking at what's called it's a recirculating system, just like a pool.
Yeah.
Right? So you've got to have all the filtration and everything. A lot of those splash pads, or they're not even a lot of times called splash pads, they're just ground fountains.
Yeah.
They're just spray and dump. So like Centennial Olympic Park, for example, that water goes straight to a sewer system and vanishes.
Okay, it doesn't
Which-
recirculate?
Huh?
It's not recirculating?
No,
Are you
that's-
aware of the Coolidge Park
I am not aware
fountain
of
in
Coolidge Park.
Chattanooga?
I'm not familiar with that
I
one.
kind of think
There-
that might recirculate.
It may be. You get to a point where it becomes more cost effective.
Yeah.
Because you're wasting so much water to actually go ahead and start recirculating. And to have a splash pad around here, around this park, we were looking at a size that would be beyond that threshold. So we would definitely want to do a recirculating system. That's kind of the driving factor. The moment you start getting into a recirculating system, you have to have a building to store that system, you have to have all the pumps and filtration and UV, the UV system that's required by the state of Georgia now, and that starts to drive your cost up pretty
Okay,
fast.
so the mechanical above-ground doohickeys are a minimal cost.
Yeah, I mean,
Underground
you might
recirculation.
you might be able to get down to, and I'm just going off memory here, you might get down to like 550 based on the same size if you just do concrete and ground sprays, but you're not dropping down to $250,000
Okay.
by getting rid of those more intricate structures. And there is another thought to keep, another thing to keep in mind as you're doing a splash pad, that there's a lot of those Vortex, Game Time, a couple of the manufacturers of those nicer systems have pieces that are interchangeable over time. So you can start with a very basic ground spray. And in fact, we're actually doing this, or just talked about doing this even at the zero entry, just to have some extra interest in there. You can start off with a ground spray, and then 5 years down the road, when you want to modify something, you can come back and buy a small bucket system that has 2 or 3 buckets on it, and they just, it's a plug-and-play piece. So we can look at just doing ground sprays. It's a very simple sort of product to help keep the budget down now, but pick a manufacturer that has that sort of interchangeable program so that down the road, a couple of years down the road, when some money frees up or a different SPLOST program comes out, they could change those fixtures out and have something a little bit different. It's kind of nice to have a spray pad that kind of evolves over time. always becomes a little more interesting. And so that's just another piece we can use to help keep the cost down now. And
What is the life of those mechanical pieces?
I have to check. I think the warranties on the brand we tend to look at are 10 to 15 years. But I would double check that.
Because there are fountains in Italy that have been in operation for 500 years. So I just wonder, like, lifespan-wise, if it might be
Yeah.
a wiser way to go.
Again, that's the warranty. I know some of those products have been around a lot longer and they're still going. Some of them get beat up in 2 years or less and then they get replaced.
All right, so we've got the additional item, and I've got a month and a half until we're going to have to make a decision about this, so be anticipating some modification. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
All right, last item of the evening is the Prince Avenue Corridor Improvements Project, and it's the proposed project concept and this TSPLOST 2020 program. And so Diane Jackson is plugging and playing.
If I know what I'm doing. Oh, yay. Yeah, okay. Do we need to take a break? Or?
No.
All right. You guys are there? Okay. All right, so tonight, John Walker and Jared Draper and I are going to speak with you about Subproject 1's concept plan for the Prince Avenue corridor improvements. This is our agenda for the evening, and again, the purpose is to present to you this proposed concept plan. The reminder, this was our user group. We had 6 residents and 4 staff. The charge was to basically go through a bunch of studies, come up with a list, which you've already approved, and then carry some of these through concept. So as a refresher, the corridor is from Sunset to Pulaski. It's 1.75 miles. A portion of it from Sunset to Millage is under state control. Okay, it's important to remember that. The portion from Millage to Pulaski is under local control. Keep that in mind. Again, we'll come back to that later. I'm not going to go through the history. We've had a long history on Prince Avenue. Okay, y'all have it in your package so that you can refresh yourself. So again, we went through, this was our list of 25 prioritized projects that came from the list of 113. It kind of acts again as a master plan. The overall goal of this is to make the corridors safe for all users. The first one on the list was to add some mid-block crossings, which Georgia DOT has agreed to put in theirs. So we took that one off. The bus trips, that's really a operational / policy decision that transit needs to make. So that's not something that we think is a capital, but again, it was something we wanted to see. So that led us to the next one, which is what we're here to talk to you about tonight. Subproject 1 is we are proposing a 90-day road diet pilot project. It will go from Barber to Pulaski. You might ask, why are we doing that? And so the goal of this, again, is to engage the drivers, reduce conflicts, make it more safer for all of the users, the vehicles, the pedestrians, the bicyclists. This pilot project, we would study the impact of this road diet, how it would impact the traffic patterns, what happens to the surrounding neighborhoods, and then, again, the feasibility of expanding that to Millage. And you might ask, well, why not extend it now to Millage? Okay, I'm going to hit that one right now, so you guys, you won't ask me later. And that is that we wanted to incrementally implement this, to spend a limited amount of money right now, and to determine whether or not this pilot is going to be successful. Okay, we want to see how the vehicle speeds change. We want to see how the pedestrian and bicycle safety changes. Do they feel safer when they're using this? Okay, and then we want to know, are the cars going to divert, and where are they going to divert? Okay, and then lastly, if we don't go to Millage, we don't have to ask Georgia DOT for permission to do it. If we do, it takes a while. The short-term, that NOPA that we sent around for the short-term implement at Parktown, which we're still waiting for permission to implement that. That's been a couple months. Okay, and then lastly, we just want to make sure that we don't have unintended consequences before implementing it on a larger segment. Okay. With that, I will turn it over. You just hit the down button.
Sounds good. Good evening. So the purpose of public engagement here is first of all to educate so that people understand what a road diet or why would we repurpose street lanes, what it is, what it's not. We want to make sure that we're talking about trade-offs and we're understanding what the benefits could be, again, with the goal being to focus on safety of all users. Ultimately, what we hope is that this entire pilot project, before, during, after, becomes a continuous feedback loop. We want to understand, and you'll see kind of coming back after a pilot project is complete, that we would see the themes, that we'd really hear some of the perceptions of what people heard or what they wanted or what they felt. And then ultimately that we would marry those things up with actual data that's collected in the pre as well as the post part of the pilot project. And so
So traffic studies have been prepared. Traffic studies have been circulated to staff and the user group. One of the things that people will ask, if you go from 4 lanes of travel to 3 lanes of travel, what's that going to do to the traffic flow? Well, not surprising, the speed will slow down and it will take a little longer to get through the corridor. And we studied from Millage to Pulaski. This slide shows the road diet, which is the yellow push pins. The green push pin shows where we have collected traffic count data already. Once the road diet is implemented, we will go back out there and we'll collect data again at the exact same spot to see, has traffic changed? Has traffic diverted off the corridor, or has everything stayed the same? And so we'll do pre and post studies as it relates to traffic volumes, but also travel time. How long does it take to get through the corridor now, Millage to Pulaski, and then also in the future with the road diet, again, how long will it take to travel eastbound, westbound through the corridor, so we can document it in an engineering report.
Does that report also include, like, I assume, you know, I see a lot of people speeding down that corridor at unsafe speeds. That'll be in the pre-report?
We have travel speeds now.
Okay.
And we will have travel speeds. Like, how long does it take during, and normally we look at the morning rush hour, which is around 8 to 9, the midday rush hour, which is about 12 to 1, and the PM peak rush hour generally is about 5 to 6. How long does it take to travel through the corridor now? And then how long does it take to travel through the corridor in the future? We have modeled that. We have modeled that, and the model says it will take a little longer to get through the corridor.
Yeah.
But we're going to go out there and actually get real, like in the car, drive the corridor.
I just want to be sure it has the speeds on there, because that's what concerns me
Commissioner
most.
Evers, I don't
Yeah.
think we have like how fast somebody's going.
If you're-
Okay?
Okay.
We don't have like they're going 75 miles an hour.
Yep.
We didn't take the
If
double-
you're asking like a radar gun, we don't have a radar gun. I don't know if city staff might. I don't know.
Okay.
But what we have are traffic counts, how many cars during
Yeah.
those that morning, lunchtime, and evening rush hours.
Okay.
Plus pedestrian counts,
Yes.
bicycle
And-
counts.
Yeah, but we don't
Right.
have how fast they're doing. We didn't set up the double, which
Yeah.
is what they do when they're doing like neighborhood traffic stuff.
Okay.
It's fair to say, just as a traffic engineering norm, that when you see road diets, you see decreased speed.
Correct. Yep, that's a good point. This slide, there's another team member, a firm, a specialty firm on our team that uses artificial intelligence type principles, and this is the intersection of Pulaski at Prince, and they also looked at Prince at Barber and also Pulaski at Hancock. 29 hours of data, 29 hours of video footage to look at potential conflicts, vehicular conflicts, pedestrian conflicts, and this is just a graphic that shows different types of conflicts that exist. Left turn conflicts, pedestrian conflicts, red light riding, merging conflicts. The reason that's important is because as we implement any type of project, road diet or other, we want to look at how can we increase safety. And increasing safety means we need to reduce risk. Well, what kind of risk? Well, it's good to understand what is going on now. Are people getting ready to step out into traffic? And we have that footage, and it was studied, again, the 3 intersections, the core 3 intersections around this.
Just a quick question. Can you go back to the previous slide? So are the red dots the conflicts or areas of concern?
So this is not collisions, this is just
this is not crashes or collisions. This is actually showing a graphic of types of movements that are potential conflict points, and this is over 29 hours.
Or near misses.
Near miss. Actually, there was quite a few near misses, and this was done during the daylight hours and nighttime hours. So it was 29 hours.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
All right, I'm going to walk us through the proposed concept. One of the things that we've talked to the user group about is their preferred when it comes to separated bike lanes, along with this road diet or lane repurposing. And so you can see here from Barber to Newton, we kind of have what we would say is some preferred items there. When we're repurposing space, we're trying not to move curbs, and so we're thinking through what can we get in that space, trying to maximize as much as we can the space for all of our users. However, there are also constrained parts of the corridor, and so you can see here Newton to Pulaski. This has a very constrained section as we approach Pulaski, where our curb-to-curb space really does have to squeeze some of those widths. And the things that we're trying to consider here are operating space, maintaining some of that street buffer space between the bicycle and the vehicle, but we're also thinking about the actual vehicle operations and transit. So we're thinking about how wide those lanes would absolutely need to be. So as we were working through this, we looked at some of the standards, not only yours, but things like AASHTO as well as NACTO, these kind of federal and national guiding agencies that our firm is luckily enough able to kind of work with to understand what are the widths that we would prefer, and then what is typical, and then what is the width that we're absolutely not going to go below as we design this. And so when we walk through the corridor in a minute, what you'll see is there will be times that we have something that's typical, there will be times that we are in that constrained condition, and then there's opportunities for us to make things wider and to try to get closer to those preferred widths. So again, back to some of the guidance, really what we're looking at, and I think I really want to mention this, I think we've talked about this before when we've mentioned Barber, was that when we say the word separated bike lane, that separation between the space that you operate your bike and the street has both a horizontal width as well as a vertical delineator. So I know oftentimes we get to like multi-use path being kind of that off the street. What we're trying to do is mimic that feeling by creating both the horizontal and the vertical. So we looked at a number of different types of vertical delineator options. You can see here the top one is this Zikla zipper. The next one is the Design Lines bike rail, and then there's a K71, which is kind of a more substantial than your typical flexible delineator post. Ultimately, after talking through with the user group, the Zikla zipper was the preferred treatment. One of the things that we really think is great about this is not only there's kind of the environmental kind of carbon footprint that Zikla is working toward, but this is a material that does a great job of being both modular and temporary, but we have a lot of communities that are already putting this in, and it is their permanent solution because they are long lasting, they're very durable, and I think that they do mimic what you would actually want to put if you were putting down a curb in that buffer space. So that is the type of unit that we are kind of using in our cost estimates, as well as what you'll see in the concept. A few kind of notes along the corridor. There are some specific treatments, bicycle boxes, two-stage turning boxes that really do allow, the reason we're using them is to make sure that people are not kind of transitioning across lanes of travel during green phases at signals. And then on the far left, you can see this turn wedge or truck apron. We're using kind of a rubberized speed bump. It's a shorter version at an angle to really create a functional, slower turning speed at the corner, and that's the corner at Pulaski and Prince. So here's the entire corridor. I'm going to break this into 3 chunks. We're going to move from Barber down to Pulaski. One of the things you'll note is that if you see something in that black kind of ink, that is the existing striping today. So things wouldn't change there. And then anything that's in kind of your newer striping is what would be modified from what's there today into the future. So looking from Barber, you can see this is where the bike lanes, the separated bike lanes begin, and the transition into the 3-lane also begins, where we've kind of narrowed things down and shifted some of the striping. The two things that I'll point out here is, one, we get to more of that preferred width of the travel lanes, as well as a 6-foot bikeway with a 2-foot buffer on one side and a 3-foot buffer on the other side. In the near intersections and driveways, we would also add in those flexible delineator posts with the Ziklas, just for more of kind of a visual as those entry and exit points. Also, there are already 2 bus shelters in this location, and so we've opened up the bikeway for those bus stops to be still used as they are today. This is one of those things that as you would look toward like a more permanent solution, there may be other options, but this is also kind of a design that works fairly well in communities across the country that have separated bike lanes. The middle of this corridor, you can see is fairly standard with the separated bike lanes, but the one thing that you'll really notice here is that the mid-block crossing has actually shifted to the west from where it is today. There are two the first 2 reasons for that. One, when it comes to kind of accessibility and safety, what we really wanted to do was find a place that we could really shorten the crossing, add in the appropriate curb ramps, and really make sure that this is, we're reducing as many of those conflict points as we possibly can, specifically with some driveways. So we have an out driveway coming on the south side, and then, but today we actually, that mid-block crossing goes into the driveway on the north side. The other thing that this does is, as 100 Prince has come online, it allows for us to maintain some left turn queuing into 100 Prince. Whereas if we were to do keep the mid-block where it is today, really having that left-hand turn queuing would stack over the mid-block crossing. And so there's a detectable warning strip, as well as a brand new curb ramp that misses the dogwood trees and ties into the sidewalk on the north side as part of the mid-block area. And then lastly, right next to Pulaski, you can see here, this is the tightest part of the corridor when it comes to the constrained widths. All of the actual markings with the through left and the designated right, all of those things are the same as it is today, but we've added in that turn wedge to kind of protect the bike movement to the right and slow down vehicles that would maybe turning. We also have a 2-stage turn queue box for those that would be coming on Pulaski, wanting to turn left on Prince, to really minimize some of the access or some of those conflict points that may occur from the merge movement across a through right. And so, but all of those pieces, as far as where the travel lanes are pointing to and where they are going, is identical to that, what is today. The one other piece here, and I'll turn this back over, is that during the pilot, one of the things that we would consider is to remove, there's a transit stop today that's near that corner, and during the pilot, we would ask to maybe remove that one, just so that we could maintain the protection as people get in the bikeway onto Prince. That transit stop serves the exact same routes as the one, less than a quarter mile away from it, near the Childs and Barber. So that's one of the things that we're having a conversation with transit about.
There's another just to the east on Doherty.
Yep. Yes. All right. So, to summarize, the pilot project would be basically steps to take to implement would be, again, the public engagement throughout the whole thing, grinding down the existing lane markings, installing temporary markings, bike boxes, turn wedges, the Zikla zippers, flex bollards, and then doing the post studies, and then getting our public comments, okay? The cost estimate to implement this would be about $85,000 with contingency, and I'm not gonna name, but that's all the stuff that you would get with that. And then if this was going to be not deemed not successful, we would then grind off what we just put on, and we would take up the Zikla zippers are basically a screw-in that you can do it as a retractable way, so it's easy to put it in and put it out, and if we want to make it permanent, then we can look at different ways to make it so it's permanent. Okay, and then, so then we would have to basically restripe it back. So that's what the $60,000 is for, okay? Wanted to make sure that you had the full picture of what it might cost. Again, we have about $3.9 million. If, for this project, we would ask $145,000. We may never need the other 60, but we would at least ask for all of that for now, which would leave, you know, $2.6 million for other projects. Our timeline and the next steps, we've already done the pre-traffic studies. Those were done in April before the students went on spring break, or not spring break, end of the year. Yeah, before finals. And then, so you guys will next see it in August to the vote, and if it's successfully, if you approve it, then we would acquire the materials, issue the POs. I've already got a contractor looking at it to give me a price. We would start the public engagement. We would implement it. We would think probably after they've had a month or two to kind of deal with it, then we would still go back in and take some traffic studies again at those 17 locations and the 3 AI locations. And we would then get some post-implementation comments and come back to you probably in January at a work session. And with that.
Melissa.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. Thank y'all. I mean,
And I
feel
don't
like
know what
this
you
is-
want me to have up, so.
I feel like this is something that should have happened 20 years ago, frankly, and I'd be willing to okay it without even the temporary status. I ride my scooter regularly from Boulevard to downtown, and I avoid this. I cut through Barber and down Pulaski to worm my way through downtown. So this is definitely much needed, and I can't imagine there being significant traffic impacts because nobody needs to be going more than 20, 25 miles an hour through that very dense urban setting anyways. I mean, it's now very, very urban with 100 prints being fully developed. So I'm really excited. I have a little bit of concern because I know there's some weird topography to those outside lanes, especially the one going into downtown as far as like slope. Do y'all foresee any problems with that as a bike lane? Because I know water collects there, like thick puddles of water collect there during big
I'm not
rainfall.
sure we have survey on that yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have a survey. I think that the one thing when you're doing some pilots and the repurposing is that is an opportunity for us to collect more data on if you were to keep it permanent, where maybe there's some spot treatments that could be done in the future.
So is there, is this section of road in line to be completely resurfaced in the foreseeable future? where we
GDOT,
could
it's
make
in
it-
GDOT's scope of work, and
That's
I
what I
think
thought.
it's 24, 25, I think. I don't know, I'm looking at
So
Ronnie, but Ronnie's
if-
looking at me like, what?
If we were to make,
Yeah.
you know, make this permanent, then it would probably undergo a resurfacing in a couple of years where it would be properly
But if
lined
we could
and-
take the Zikla zippers up. And then I also was reading in their user guide or installation guide that you can also cover them if you're gonna paint. So you'll get paint on them and stuff, because they're reflective. They're also, if you didn't pick up, they are super sustainable. They're made with like, recyclable materials. So, yes, right?
Y'all gonna beat me up on this one. I know y'all are. So just from the
You're
history.
part of town.
I know.
You're on
I know
the
your
east side,
constituents,
man.
Patrick.
You got the
Come on.
hazmat truck. Come on.
I know. I'm just saying, like, if you look at Doherty, what we did with Doherty, we reduced the lanes by adding the parking on the side, and that caused congestion. So now what we're gonna do is extend the congestion. I know. I'm just saying, like, I support the 90-day pilot. Let's take a look at it. But just by November, just be prepared that, because if you look at the Barber Street going west, there's that turning lane, there's 2 lanes there, and it always backs up past Child. So if you reduce the lane to just 1 lane with a center, and then you got a new turn lane, well, I'm just saying, I don't know.
That
I
Doherty
look forward to
congestion was
the
fixed.
90 day, I'm just saying.
Carol.
Just be prepared.
A couple of questions here. Can you go back to the timeline?
Yes.
Okay. you can't speed that up a little bit? Let me ask you a question. I am coming from the east side, where we had a trial, as Jared remembers, and that got a lot of public.
This one's totally different.
It's totally different,
Totally
but I'm
different.
wondering what lessons we might have learned from an experience like that in order to educate the public and prepare for that, and, yeah, along those lines.
Yeah. I think that a lot of lessons learned. And so we've already been talking about how do you do kind of that pre-education about something's coming, this is what it is, this is why we're doing it. I think that may have not been as robust as it could have been in previous pilots. I also think that this is a very different context, and I think that's a very important distinction, is that what we're trying to do is move people very safely through here, and speed is one of those issues. Who can use it safely is another one, and so I think that we want to make sure that we want to be very transparent, and not only the benefits, but the trade-offs, and there will be trade-offs, just like every project you ever do. But that needs to be upfront in kind of the engagement process, and something that's like, that we want that continuous feedback loop. Like, that's not a message that goes away during the pilot project, because anytime you put something on the ground, specifically something like this, I'm working on projects right now with it, the first 2 weeks, all you did is negative. But I think that you have to understand that, like, that's why we want to take the perceptions and themes. We really want to, like, marry that up with the data part of it, because that should tell you a very complete story.
In terms of this, and I think you said this before, is the idea that this is a pilot, but if this was wonderfully successful and everyone embraced it, is the idea to have this start at millage then? To go in there. So some of the car diversions might be different when that happens, right? So, I mean, there's not that much, like, I'm just thinking about where you could cut through to avoid the traffic. In this area, you'd have to be cutting through before that, and some of those things would change. So I guess maybe people would turn right on. I mean, the idea is that you might turn right onto Millage and then go down to Broad Street, right? I'm anticipating how this would play out there. I'm just really concerned about how it plays out to the public and the safety and such. And you know, to be upfront, looking at the timeline, there's a lot of people on this commission now who have heard a lot about pedestrian safety, bike safety, slowing things down, complete streets, and we're having there'll be a turnover of people behind here voting, and I'm just a little concerned about this, because so many people are, you know, the more I'm on here behind the rail, the more I realize that I've been thinking about bikes, walking, alternative transportation, out of the car a lot more than most people have for the last 40 years. So I'm the kind of education we do about this in PR, and I don't know who else is doing that, I think is going to be crucial in this. And also the support and education of those commissioners in those districts, and on the east side completely, to educating people throughout the community, all of us. Because we actually, I mean, I drive over here even though I drive and bike over here even though I live on the east side.
Russ?
I think this is a great idea. I mean, the research I read is that iterative design like this is really the way forward to try to collect data, make sure it works. You know, I thought your schematic with the conflicts that exist in this corridor was great. You know, I look forward to seeing more presentations like that moving forward, you know, where we can actually get video evidence here of the dangers of this corridor. I mean, that's why we're acting here. We're trying to do something here to solve this problem. So I have high hopes for this pilot. You know, People fly down this corridor. I see it all the time anecdotally. It's unsafe. You know, there's no children, there's no elderly walking in this area. So, you know, what kind of city are we going to build for the next generation? I think that's the question. You know, the most convenient commuter thoroughfare for people driving in on football game weekends, or a place where all of our citizens can navigate safely. So, thank you.
Mayor, thanks, Commissioner Edwards, and I do want to point out that, you know, the data is very important, the iterative process is very important, and you know, these are consulting traffic engineers that we've had to employ to make sure that we do this in a proper way, so we do appreciate their professional expertise, and it's crucial to making sure that we make good decisions.
Jesse.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you so much for enduring a very long meeting and then putting together a thorough and fantastic presentation, not reading off every list, and you know, that was great. I have, I guess, two questions. The first is, you had talked a bit about this with the why not go further to millage, and that we don't need GDOT approval if we stick to this segment. What is it that makes this segment different from going, is it just the length that we're sticking to that keeps us from having to ask GDOT, or is it this particular section after Barbara we do?
So the intersection at Millage is basically the DMZ, okay?
Okay.
So if we encroach into Millage, we're gonna have to get permission. If we stay outside of Millage, and they have a couple of ideas for that, or you have a couple ideas for that, we could maybe not have to ask their permission and go as 90, I call it 95% of the way, you know?
Could we go as far as Grady? And it would be the same?
Yeah, so ultimately, you could start your narrowing, the repurposing of the lanes after the Millage intersection. We would anticipate that some of the diversion and or evaporation of traffic would happen the same. Like, as the other commissioner had mentioned, like, really, when you create a narrowing downstream, oftentimes we see vehicle, like driver behavior. If they don't like that experience, they're not waiting to the bottleneck to divert. And so, again, that a lot of the pre and post will tell us some of that information, but it is possible to push the repurposing of space. You won't get the same protection of like your all users, kind of bike, ped, and vehicle at Millage, which would be really important in the long term, but you could kind of shift it toward that intersection.
Well, ultimately, I resonate with the idea that we want to, I think, you know, move this along as expeditiously as possible. I don't know if even maybe, I mean, this is a pilot, right? It's not even a permanent decision we're making, so maybe it makes sense for us to special call session, consider it in July, just to give a little more time earlier on. It's a thought maybe for the mayor. I'd be interested, not if this requires us delaying doing anything right now, because I'm really excited to see this move forward, but going as far as at least Grady, you know, that just gets a bit more of the road. And, you know, that relates a bit too to also what I'm thinking in terms of one of the things we're likely to hear in public comment is probably a lack of use of some of these amenities, and them being new and to some degree temporary in progress, but also for only a short stretch of road. You know, you don't have the kind of connectivity that we envision eventually having along this corridor. So it's not super attractive for a cyclist to hop on for just a block to a busy street when they're already routing themselves along some other different route. So, you know, with all that in mind, if there's any way to go closer to Millage without breaching, that would be.
So, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we actually anticipated that. We ran some cost number on the basically implementation as far as we could go. We think it would actually bring taking away what's existing, putting in would be the pilot, to approximately $185,000. So it adds close to $100,000. But then putting it all back actually puts it like 120,000. Because it's a longer stretch. We don't think there's some other creative ways to make that design work really effectively without losing on-street parking that's there today. But those are the cost implications. We are pretty committed to making the design However, that extent is work within the timeline that we have.
And I'll tell you, the one other person we have to deal with is the president's house. So we will have to work with them, and that just to make them feel comfortable about everything there.
We'd also have to collect some additional data on the streets that would be impacted to the west of.
I think we'd be pretty close. Again, with the points that we've already kind of looked, we looked pretty network-based. And so I think that we would have a pretty good idea. There may be, we could definitely take a look and see if there's one or two more that we want to add, if we were going to take that far.
Well, in addition to, last thought on this, if I may, in addition to just liking the idea of giving this to more of the corridor, another thing to think about is the school district campus that would get us across the school district campus that's there now, that used to be Piedmont, and also run us up to that park that's there. So I just, we're thinking about safe crossings and things. Maybe it's worth us going further to cover those, even if we have to reckon with the presidential
I
palace.
mean, beyond Millie?
No. Closer to millage, just shy of it, yeah.
Yeah, stopping at the millage, while we talked about Georgia DOT jurisdiction, but there's also a traffic movement, heavy traffic movement, Prince to millage back to Prince. So there is a traffic drop. So naturally, that seems like a good area for a road diet, simply because the traffic volumes are already oriented to and from millage.
I would,
Tim.
So I would say, especially hearing that a lot of this work's already been done and some of the natural benefits maybe that we could actually see from putting it the 95% way, I think, as you put it, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think it'll give a more realistic trial, I guess, also. So yeah, I would definitely be in favor of us going ahead and doing that. Again, I definitely am excited to see this happen. Much what Commissioner Edwards said, this is the kind of corridor that should have something like this. Every time I drive down here and like lunchtime, I see people eating lunch at the grit on the sidewalk there. It just frightens me because the car traffic is so close. So you get those other benefits too, right, of having that buffer between automobiles and the pedestrians there on the sidewalk.
You get those brakes locking up all the time while you're in.
Yeah, so I think this is the absolute perfect corridor that this needs to happen in. And then also just continuing to connect this thing to other issues that we've been talking about tonight. We go into our clean renewable energy plan and our sustainability plan. For us to ever actually meet those kind of goals, we cannot be operating with the same kind of transportation mindset. We have to be doing things like road diets, especially in areas that make sense like here. If we're ever going to meet those goals, we just have to be taking these steps. And will there be some trade-offs? There definitely will be. But some of the benefits that we get from those trade-offs are not just transportation specific, they're also sustainability specific too. So I'm very excited for this moving forward, and yes, would definitely support the us going ahead and doing it as far up as we can.
yeah. Carol. One last comment. I am as well on that, and I'm glad you brought up the sustainability as well. I think that this is a great place also where we can work during this trial period with our local bike shops, Bike Athens, to get people out there. The place that was out on the east side was harder for people to get to, so I think getting people out there and using it will be helpful. But I do think, I do think that, I hope that in our agenda report, the focus is also on 3-laning as a way to slow down traffic, to make it safer for people walking. I think that's really important because the bike transportation habits are going to take a long while to do. And I know that come whenever we vote on this, there's going to be someone saying, what were the bike counts before and what were the bike counts after? So I think it's really important for the rhetoric to also just to focus on the safety, the kind of community we want to have where people feel safe to sit outside. And actually, don't we have those, we have the new restaurant in the church, the one down the street from where you live, right? So we have more going on in that area, and in a way, it's become a little bit more of an extension of downtown. And so I think it's important in all this process, that agenda report, so that we have that kind of information to really refer to in terms of safety, because people are going to see those bike lanes and think this is just a bike lane thing. So let's hype up all the other parts of it as well.
So just briefly diving into a couple of the component pieces that have already been mentioned. So very explicitly, have you mocked up a 95% pilot plan?
Not yet. So we have, this is what we would say is schematic, which basically gets us ready to develop draft signage and marking plans. It's a fairly quick process. We've done we had to do a very rough design to get cost estimate of what it would take to extend to millage. So that hasn't gone to this detail yet, which we would need to take that fairly quickly and then turn the whole thing into draft and final signage and marking so a contractor could be ready to implement. And then, as Diana mentioned, actually purchasing that product, they're on a 30 to 40 day from order to shipment to like receiving. And so we're trying to build those things in to how this may work.
Is that feasible by, would you be able to feasibly pull that off by the July agenda setting meeting, July 19th?
The design?
Yeah, the schematic design for the
Okay.
larger.
So you mean
that level by, yes.
like this?
Mhm.
Like this?
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The thing that we're seeking to approve in this cycle, right?
Because I'd be an advocate for the 95% version in the pilot phase. Because I'm already an advocate for the road diet all the way to village.
So I guess my question is, would we have direction from you to go ahead and seek ordering the zippers?
Well, I mean,
Or you
ultimately,
want to
I
wait
guess.
till July?
I mean, ultimately, my general sense is that staff doesn't order things until we approve at a vote. So I don't know if there's pre-ordering going on because there are fingers in the wind, but the finger in the wind would suggest that the 95% plan is the preferred one.
The other thing, again, we want to mention is that a product like that, that we talked about, is modular. And we've seen people use it in pilot as well as permanent installations. And so it's a product that could be used here, but could be used anywhere.
And it should be used anywhere.
I'm thinking of maybe
Yeah.
making a bike corral on Clayton with it.
So
Protected.
if it can be used anywhere, this is a question for Manager Williams. I mean, can
I-
that part of this be?
I mean, we can get a PO, we can get a pricing from it and then come to you if it's under 200 or something.
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, can I just say real quick? I mean, I love the zipper thing. I mean, I think this body should support putting those on every bike lane that we have. Because it actually creates the protection, that creates the security for the enjoyment of the actual lane.
All right, very good work.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
All right, motion adjourned from Commissioner Hool.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Denson, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.